What's
Welcome.
up, everybody?
Welcome
to NEUROPA.
NEUROPA.
Sorry, I felt like there was kind of like it's like a who's gonna draw first on that one, but yeah. Welcome to NEUROPA. He's right. Listen to him.
We're both gonna draw on it. So this was a Japanese-inspired cumbia song, because this is where the AI gave the most interesting results. And I have to say,
A little bit of peach opera in there too, right? Or plum opera, whatever.
Yeah, ever since I, barely was able to walk around and remember anything, I always loved this Andean type music and instruments for some reason. And at least back then, you don't really have them anymore. Imagine in Vienna city center, which you've seen, you have like basically a group which looks like, well, someone uneducated would say, oh, they're, well, Indians, again, is the wrong word. In German, you would say Indianer. In English, you would say Native Americans or whatever native individuals with these flutes and so on, like these, not pan flutes, but, where you have the different, how should I say it, various tubes, varying sizes, all of these instruments, really nice. I always
is that
like
not a
that
pan
music.
flute? What's that called?
Maybe.
Pan flute, right?
Not sure. It is actually, yeah.
Flute. Yeah.
Yeah.
Looks like this you're talking about?
Oh, exactly, yes. Yes,
yeah.
SOQUEL,
Pan
yes.
flutes are based, right? Yeah, someone brought this up kind of the other day because they showed a picture of this the Greek flute, the Greek 2 flute. What's that called again? The double allos, right? This is the one. Sorry, my tab wasn't a window share. This is a pretty cool Greek allos, the double reed pipe or double clarinet. And they sent the music for this. I highly recommend checking it out. It sounds super trippy. 2 sounds at the same time. It's sort of a binaural entrainment feeling in a sense, but maybe better described as like frequency modulate, like a FM synthesizer kind of thing, where like one's coming up and the other's coming down. It's really interesting how it works. Highly recommend checking out some more of these flutes. But yeah, legit. I mean, also the Chinese opera. I was hearing, it's kind of Japanese, but there's this thing. I forget. I feel like it's called peach opera or peach plum opera or something like that. It's like 20th century style Chinese music that has a lot of Western influences. So you can hear that kind of Hellenistic scaling, like the Pythagoras style scaling. So it sounds kind of melodic in a way that Japanese music doesn't. Not that it's not melodic, but you know what I mean? Japanese music is a little bit more, I want to say idiosyncratic, and
yes,
I like it. I like that, actually.
Maybe that's why the fusion comes across interesting here with the cumbia. I can only remember the first time I was in Japan many years ago. I stayed with a family, and the first thing after arriving at Narita Airport is there literally was like a cultural festival in the village or town next door. So the very first thing I saw was this fair, and the shamisen players, and stuff like that. So it's pretty cool, yeah. And of course, I had brought this up before. There is something called awa odori, which is the wind of something. And this is particularly famous in Shikoku, I want to say now, and Tokushima, where I was also. And they sing in a really interesting way. You have these dancers. I showed them before where they're doing the street parades. But also overall, when you have like this shamisen, which you say is quite idiosyncratic in terms of melody already, and then you have like some old Japanese lady singing on a very interesting scale, or very interesting melodies that would be far removed from anything a Western mind could be used to, but still very interesting.
Yeah. I mean, this is a little off topic, but since you brought that up in terms of Japan, did we talk about the Fukushima forest lack of microbes thing because of radiation already?
Maybe something, but please bring it up.
Well, just really quickly and really randomly. So I was doing this kind of pull this in a way that we could both see it here. There we go. So soil microbes and plant-associated microbes in response to radioactive pollution may indirectly affect plants and insect herbivores. So they've been doing all these studies on Fukushima and the area around the Daiichi nuclear power station because obviously, and you'd be expecting, if you believed in the narrative, that radiation would be growing a bunch of two-headed fish and there should be like freak spiders and where's my giant direwolves and Godzillas. That's what you would hope that there'd be some weird mutations that prove that radiation is the worst thing for you. But that's not happening, obviously. What you see instead are totally healthy salmon, totally healthy fish, totally healthy. There was like a couple pictures of some spiders.
Who knows? Maybe healthier than ever before.
Well, that's where we're getting, because like there are a couple weird things. Like there's some spiders that have like a funny leg. There's some spiders that have some funny looking spider webs. Okay, like that's fair. I mean, spiders make funny looking spider webs if you give them nicotine. There's no reason that radiation shouldn't also do something kind of strange. But they're still pretty nice spider webs and they're doing okay. What isn't normal about Fukushima and Daiichi is that all of the microbes in the forest died. So when you go to the forest, normally there's a bunch of little things that are eating the if the leaves come out of the trees in the fall and autumn, they end up getting consumed and mulched and they turn back into a compost soil, right? But wrong in Fukushima after the radiation, because there's nothing to do that. So you have leaves that are just on the ground 10, 20 years, I guess 15 years old now. There's no change to the soil. The leaves are just static because nothing's consuming them. And every once in a while there'll be a fire. If there's a fire, then the leaves will burn up and then you'll have radioactive isotopes from the carbon soot, but that'll spread and then it happens elsewhere. So there's a bunch of places where it seems to be super healthy because it killed off all of these microbes that were digesting the compost soil, which is normally also like it's a good thing to have microbes that will digest the soil. It's not like you want them all dead, but it's very interesting that without them consuming all of the life, that the smallest things that would normally be consuming you, right, that these things are gone. It seems like a lot of things are surviving and living rather healthfully in the Daiichi region of Fukushima without any sort of problem, mainly because radiation killed off all the natural microbes. Yeah, exactly. That's my story. All right, well, I wanted to pull that up, but let's go to, did I go too far back? We're going to go to the Commency.app page. This is where we find the links to the NEUROPA log right here. And today is The More You Know, and The More You Know featuring Pikachu. I love this picture you created here. Pikachu holding a sort of sacred geometric flower of life Pokeball, right? Is that?
Yeah, so the flower of life, I don't think I prompted the AI to actually do that. I just wanted it to be holding a ball. It's not exactly holding it, but it's floating around with
He's
it.
kind of, yeah, he's electrostatic tethering.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And the other thing I noticed, which I found interesting, is at the very bottom of the tail, you can almost see it's a bit like brownish or blackish maybe. But of course, the very tip is not, black or brown as maybe some people would remember it to be.
Oh, it's like a Mandela effect on the Pokemon.
But the reverse, so
I like it.
we know that one. But yeah, I thought
Dude,
it's
how
okay.
he looks kind of sinister too. He's got those subtle, he's like, I will murder you kind of vibe, which is what you
not wrong. I didn't think of that, but not wrong.
Pikachu
and the other
is sinister, yeah.
And that's the other question, like, why is the very first Pokemon, and I didn't do any research into this, so please forgive me for not knowing the canon answer, but why exactly is Pikachu actually the first Pokemon? To do with electricity And that's like the first thing, and that's the most, it's not the first Pokemon in the numbering scheme, but the very first one that everyone knows that Ash receives in the beginning.
So I
So
always think it's because of Prince Bernhardt and the Bilderberg Group, obviously. You know the movie Nausicaa, right? Have you seen Nausicaa?
I'm
Nausicaa, Inherit the Wind. It's like the most important
a Ghibli
of.
movie, right?
Yeah. Well, funny enough, Nausicaa is the character in Homer's Odyssey, the daughter of King Alcinous. Her name means burner of the ships, right? But they made an anime and a manga originally from Miyazaki, that's about sort of after the collapse of civilization, and we're living in a post-nuclear, a post-apocalyptic world filled with a toxic ecosystem with giant bugs. We were just talking about that in a weird way. It's basically the idea that if Fukushima went super hard, then all of a sudden you'd have these giant, I don't know what kind of bug this is, the Omni they called it, but is it basically kind of like a maggot, or it has a shell? So what bugs have kind of exoskeletons like that? I'm not sure, but imagine if you had sort of like a maggot sized bug all of a sudden evolved into a bug the size of an airport, and there's just thousands of these super giant bugs, and there's this little girl who flies around on a little skateboard, a skyboard or something like that. But in the movie and in the manga, you'll notice in the mutated future world there are these pocket monsters, and she has a monster in her pocket, which is, if this isn't Pikachu,
Oh yeah,
it's kind of Raichu. Like if you recall
right.
the evolved version of Pokemon. To me, I really do see a connection here. It's a bit different, but really no. I'm pretty sure that this is Pikachu's this is at least Pikachu's daddy. You know, it's a scarier, more feral version of Pikachu, but it's
Yeah,
generally the
before it
same
got
thing.
domesticated.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's so I think that that's in a lot of ways where the Pikachu comes from, is from Nausicaa. And even the idea of pocket monsters in general, I think is sort of, there's a lot of other things going on in manga and anime that would have influenced this. But in a lot of ways, I think it's this idea that in a post-apocalyptic world, we have these mutated radioactive super monsters that humans are using to fight against each other. And somehow that turned into a cute kid story, but you can see where originally it was a little bit darker. But okay, let's pull up also, because on the links list here, just so you know, I'm not the only person with an X account. It's not just Xirtus. You can go right here to the bottom. We're going to talk about bioelectricity, a very Pokemon subject, and you'll find the first link takes you right to Act Like You Know 26, which is secretly Act Like You Know 0. Don't ask me why, but this is the
Because of
links
the
page.
character limit on X, that's why.
Oh, that's all? Okay. I think 0
Yeah.
is a cool number too. But you can find actlikeyouknow.xyz, and this is a long list of things that'll get you to all of Raphael's recommendations, including, you got PayPal donation, Tartaria research collection, a watch YouTube. I'll get back to the Telegram in a second, but also the Odyssey backup and product recommendation, which is pretty interesting because we should be all doing this, is figuring out things that don't suck and things we like to use and putting them in a place where you can get a discount to them. For instance, the garlic that we're a big fan of, like a IQ tincture, this stuff right here that I eat all the time. If you ever like love somebody or you hate somebody, this is the answer. You know what I mean? Like if you want to save them, you give it to them. And if you want to get them away from you, you just spray a little garlic in your mouth and then you just be like, what's the problem? One time I went onto a plane with my dad and my brother. There's these cute girls sitting in the plane, and right before we got on the plane, because we've been giving my dad garlic because it really seems to help get his energy going and get him alive, make him think and everything. It was doing amazing stuff, walking, from dementia to walking across Croatia, doing really well. But we just all took the garlic at the same time, and we all breathed as we entered the plane, and these girls looked like they were about to pass out. They were like, oh God, it
Well,
was just an
it's
intense.
vampire repellent as well, you know?
Yeah,
So
and I was gonna say, I'm pretty sure these girls were vampires. That's the only explanation. So, love hate it. Like some people think garlic isn't their favorite flavor. That means it's a medicine for you, probably more than anybody else. But that, you know what? Not medical advice. I'm just saying that's just my opinion. A lot of lots of H words. Did I say H a bunch of times? I didn't even notice. So okay, check out this because the reason is you can put Xirtus or RAF26 and get your 15% discount and try it out. There's also other things here like dark field microscopy. And you'll notice these products are associated with videos where we've talked about this stuff. Here's the translated conversation you had with who's in this one again? This is with
get who we will finally also get on. So quite a
right.
few of the things on this site actually are, well, have also been quote unquote studied or looked at by Gerd. I want to say
Mm-hmm.
Gerd only because the stupid AI put his name that way.
You call them Gert.
And
That's cool.
and
Kind of like Elmo and
he's
Gert.
doing dark field microscopy, which, how I understand it, may in many cases even be more accurate, even on one side, which is also referenced on the links. What I've been using for a long time ago is a simple water filter, and even there on that
Right.
side, the guy himself says, well, actually, if you want to do interesting blood work that tells you anything, you may actually want to do have a look at live blood, and one of the ways to do that is through dark field microscopy, which can give you very different results than doing a regular type of blood testing.
Right.
For many different reasons. And in the blood, actually, oftentimes you can even get a kind of a forecast of your health status. So for example, you would do this today, then you change your diet and whatever else, use supplements, exercise,
Mm-hmm.
all those things. And then even though maybe within a week or two, you wouldn't notice great effects yourself yet, but it could actually already be visible in the blood. For example, that your blood cells, white blood cells, I guess, are fighting less, or already
Mm-hmm.
there's less filament or less, clotting together. And you can see all of that in this dark field microscopy, which kind of, although it is, I would say, quite scientific, however you would call that. Of course, there's possibility for manipulation and everything, but this is a somewhat well-researched thing, but it's not really something, I guess, your regular health insurance, a regular doctor would ever put you up with. Maybe
No.
also because it would immediately show whether whatever they're prescribing you is actually
Yeah, I mean,
improving the condition of your
It
own
might
blood.
it might like, take it might take, what's that called? It might be taking some too much credit away from, other fine medical choices that Pfizer might have offered you instead, right? So
Although,
it's a
and this is something
distraction.
we didn't even bring up today, and we can go on to that video in a second on my X account, which is the reason why even I put it up there. But didn't
You
Trump?
gotta buy a microscope to do garlic? No, you're gonna be fine. You don't need the
No,
microscope.
the microscope is for the dark field microscopy. That's like a particular study, and it's, if you do it, make sure you go to somebody who's done this for some time and who is honest with it. Like I said, there's possibility for manipulation and nitpicking
Yeah,
images with everything, but if you do it properly and consistently, and that's why
yeah.
quite a few of the products on that page are supported by studies he did, because it was like, oh, I found something interesting, someone with a small company, they developed something that seems cool. Please,
The
get
Free
once you
Spirit
take
Aqueon water filter right here. Yeah.
a look at it in terms of the dark field microscopy and tell me if it's a real thing. Does it actually improve the blood condition, which most oftentimes, as with any other thing related to health, as I always say, has to do with the body's capacity to transport and process oxygen, which is
Mhm.
simply, well, not air exactly, but oxygen, right? And if your body is able to do that, then your cells, your mitochondria, are able to switch in the Krebs cycle to the aerobic energy production, and then you actually have energy in your body. And of course, you have energy in your body. Anything else, whether it's detoxification or just having a life, may be more easy and fun because your body has energy and you don't always feel depleted. So
Yeah.
that's why you find quite a few of these dog field references on
Also,
that
if you're
site.
keeping up with your Duolingo, in German, dark is dunkel, which is just fun to say Dunkelfield. If you didn't know, Dunkelfeld is dark field. And if you wanted to be like Bielefeld, I think would be light field. So I mean, in like 6 minutes, I'm going to be good at German. It's amazing. Thank you
Oh yeah.
for trying to help me.
Oh yeah.
But there was another point here, which was if you go again to the Act Like You Know 26 Twitter X page that is set up by Raf, and please start following this page because Raf's posting a lot of cool stuff here. This will also
No,
get
actually,
you.
you have to follow Xirtus Amoeba because I'm reposting his stuff. So
That's true too.
but you'll see that
We'll
there.
get to that. By the way, and again, shout out to Xirtus Amoeba. Jose, you're doing amazing stuff. Thank you for posting today. You just posted a video I saw that was our talk on. Well, we were talking about John C. Lilly and Echo, and so it's just so great to see a 5 minute or 10 minute quick peek. It just makes me super happy. So everybody who's you're here with us, you like to watch a 2 hour talk, that's awesome. A lot of you have friends who can only handle like 5 minutes at a time and you don't want to just send them like, oh, watch
That's
this
the
whole
right way
video.
to put it.
It's true. It's true. And like give your friends like a little taste of the meal, But I brought it up because if you go to his X page, there is something cool here. From the Act Like You Know 26, you can go down to the Telegram updates. And that's a sweet deal. Like the Raf's Telegram group it's really well organized. There's a number of different sort of, I want to say, categories that you can look at.
Yeah,
They're
so
all set up.
actually, this is the public facing page. So what you get there is if you use Telegram and I'm doing any type of show, usually I always manage to at least post a link a few minutes prior, or if I
Right.
release a new video, I usually put it there. But if you want to join it's actually a private Telegram group, which is the few people we talk about, history, about health stuff, about memes and propaganda or anything else, then please simply contact me on Telegram directly or write me an email or anything. All my contacts is on my website. And then I can just add you to the group if you're interested in joining
Yeah.
there. So that's
And there's some pretty cool things here beyond NEUROPA, for instance, the Team Rabbit Hole stuff. So Julia did a great conversation with Raf and Jim here, including Johnny Enoch. I was invited, but I was busy. I'm sorry, I think I was on a plane at the time or something. But we're gonna do another one soon with both of them. I did a video with Johnny and Julia recently that I had a good time, but I'd love to see
you
this
were
conversation.
on the first J code. J code is the right way to
Yeah.
put it. J code episode with Julia and Johnny. They started their own podcast series now, which is great.
Yeah, I love what they're doing. I love what you're doing with Jim. Jim's doing amazing stuff. I love Jim. And you guys also did recently a Team Rabbit Hole, which was available on Xirtus as well, with Chris from Chris Knowles from The Secret Sun, who you've probably seen on our show before. We did a couple sync tanks with Secret Sun Chris before. I really enjoy his work. I've known him for years. I remember at one point, I was a jerk to him basically, and he just found that amusing. So we became friends over it. When I was 15. I was like, "Hey man, what do you know?" or something. I forget how it started, but basically, if you don't know Chris, you're gonna want to, and if you don't know about the Cockatoo Twins, you're gonna just make sure you watch this conversation. Really great, really hard to emphasize how great Team Rabbit Holes are. You guys should be watching Team Rabbit Holes every chance you get, and they're all listed in the Telegram. So that's why I say go follow Act Like You Know 26. Yeah, okay. I feel pretty good about that. The next thing on the list was Robert Becker. Did you want to bring up why we bring this up?
Yeah, so we had mentioned him last time, but I completely fluked on showing the video. So if we can, please actually go to my X page with sound enabled. And that's just a old video of him because he's not alive anymore, where he talks about bioelectricity and EMFs, which I found is interesting and
Okay, let's
hopefully
go down.
not too contentious. It's right at the top, I think, maybe even
Really?
already.
I think you got the
Oh no.
Xirtus amoebas at the top.
Okay,
See?
no, but it just
That's what I'm
looks so
saying. I'm super
cool. Yeah.
proud. Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
vertical
I'm
too.
like,
I'm
this-
really
yeah, this
stoked
is
on
really
you,
good.
Xirtus Amoeba. Everybody, just one more like round of applause for Xirtus Amoeba. And if you aren't following him on Instagram, get up on the Instagram because he's starting to do the verticals. So, this is. I mean, we're gonna just spread like some sort of a social virus into the TikToks
And
the
however he
Instagram.
managed to do that, because I didn't supply him any extra graphics, but it looks perfect with the NEUROPA on the bottom. And even it says no entry at the top from the Cyberpunk 2077 AI modified screenshot. So really nice.
Jose, you're a stunner and a gentleman, sir. Okay, so down the list a little bit here, RFK, placebo vaccines. Where's this? Is this it, Alexis?
Yes.
There we go. Okay, I'm gonna hold on. Let me get the audio playing for this clip really quick. Okay, so we're gonna go back here. We'll go to a full screen. I'll start at the beginning, and here we go.
There's a possibility that electric current generated in a fashion such as this could possibly cause heart disease and/or stroke.
Yes.
You have to know that that's a mind-blowing thought for a lot of people, including me.
I'm aware of that. I was a member of the first ad hoc committee to evaluate the biological studies that were performed for Project Sanguine. And I most certainly sat there and listened to several studies that had very definite effects, yes. Animals exposed grow at a slower rate than control animals. A number of projects have shown this to be true. The second area in which definite effects do appear is that exposure to this type of field seems to produce stress.
Is it true that the Navy repressed that report for better than 2 years?
The Navy did not disseminate the report widely. Human volunteers were exposed to the same sort of magnetic field that the sanguine antenna would emit. And there was a very definite indication that following such exposure for a 24-hour period of time, that these people experienced considerable elevations in their serum triglycerides. We know of, I believe it's 5 specific projects in which positive results were obtained when the projects were terminated and the money just disappeared. There was no more to continue the work.
Now, is this a definite pattern?
It appears to be.
That when a study begins to find that there may be adverse effects, that the money dries up?
Not even adverse effects, any effect. If a person has already publicly gone on record that the voltage field from a transmission line, 1,000,000 times stronger than that from the sanguine antenna, is harmless, then obviously he cannot do an about-face and say the sanguine antenna may be harmful. So that a number of people on this committee, I would feel, have a pre-bias.
Is what you're trying to say that we're playing with a stacked deck?
I think so, yes. I certainly would not want to live in an area where such an antenna system was operative, nor would I want any of my family living there. I cannot say for certain today that this would be hazardous, but there exists in my mind a very clear-cut indication that it may
be, right? So there you go. There's Becker talking about biofield, electromagnetic biofield,
quote unquote. And as we've shown on previous shows, and anyone, you can just look this up on YouTube. There's many videos about this, but the best thing, of course, is always verify it yourself. You don't need a piece like this. It can be much smaller, but it really appears as if elite shungite, or what they call noble shungite, may in some strange way modulate these fields, or at least the EMF readers. If you put it next to a cell phone, you put a small piece of that next to it, seems to go down dramatically. And I have had even personal friends and different online research that actually suggests that for some reason, maybe because of the carbon structure or something, this is actually one potential way to alleviate some of that EMF field pressure, if for some reason you feel you may, want to do that for yourself. And what I find interesting, I mean, there's, I believe, this book called Invisible Rainbow, and many other books that talk about all kinds of strange health conditions arising anytime there is a significant upgrade to the worldwide wireless communication system. And what I had brought up, and I will keep bringing this up endlessly, is this German researcher who did something called GCOM, Hartmut Müller, where he says he's using gravitational waves for telecommunication, which would not require any type of network infrastructure and also would not create any of this particular type of electromagnetic fields. But of course, this research is most likely being used by some military, but not publicly accessible, unfortunately.
And Use Your Feeling says, bro, that's a $4,000 chunk of shungite. Do you want to?
No, I got a good price, but yes, supposedly these will appreciate in time. No, it depends on where you get it, and as always, with anything that you source, I can always only recommend. Best thing is, of course, some trusted friend who's giving you a good deal and actually knows the suppliers. This one, I mean, it is special in a way and a good price because this was actually collected by someone in Russia themselves. And my friend had a direct contact to that individual who just went around caves and so on. And then they more or less randomly found really nice chunks. And one of them was this one. And of course, I chose it because I'm not even sure if it's modified in any way, but also because it reminds you of the Black Mirror, just like a phone. It's or like your screen when you turn it off, you have all the black mirrors all around you.
Super obsidian vibes.
One to create the frequency and one to modulate it, maybe.
Yeah. You can definitely spend more than you need to on shungite, but you can also get it from sources still pretty cheap. It's worth it to look around and try to find something in the, 100 instead of thousands of dollar, range.
Oh, and what you can even do, just last thing, you can even get a really pretty small piece. This is one thing I like to do, and just have it as a necklace, for example. And again, like I said, with everything, just like with the shilajit and so on, do your own research, check different suppliers. There can be price differences up to 10-fold. So it is worth it to do a bit of research before you buy, especially if you're planning to shell out more than $100 or whatever.
Absolutely. Okay, and so Body Electric, book by Becker, talking about orthopedic surgeon in Sunny State working for the Veterans Administration, researched our bioelectric cells. Highly recommend, like we said, looking into Becker's work and, check out shungite. So the next thing was RFK. RFK Jr. says Trump wants radical transparency on food safety.
I'm pretty sure that's not the point I'm interested in. Yeah, here it is. The caption on the image.
Is requiring all new vaccines to undergo placebo-controlled trials. What a crazy guy, right? Like
what a completely insane idea, And now I only wish we get all the viewers from the MAGA crowd to start watching this podcast. Now you may learn something. Of course, everyone present not included in my statement. What I find interesting, because on the one hand, it appears to me as if some of the things that are being done are like placebos or are like, oh, look here, we're removing the red dye, but we don't care about all these other very important factors. I'm also not the biggest fan, without explaining it further, that RFK also said, oh, no, I'm not anti-vaccine. All my children are vaccinated and all of that is so great. So it's a bit mixed signals, and also with his family history, there is, potential robber baron associations, all kinds of strange things. However, leaving all of that aside, the simple idea to actually do placebo-controlled studies, assuming they are done properly and in a neutral way, without now foregoing the conclusions I have in my mind, let me just say they could greatly improve the quality of healthcare and potentially even reduce
and the medical theory, just health theory in general. Because, all right, you saw, did you see him recently under blast because RFK Jr. had gone swimming in the creek? You saw that one?
Why it's too dangerous to swim in the creek, or?
Yeah,
I heard people swimming in the New York City sewers, and they said they were super healthy later. I mean, that's 50 years ago, but yeah.
Exactly.
Or maybe even you told me.
George Carlin avoided getting polio. All the rich kids in his town got polio from the swimming pools, they thought, right? So they were, at the time, they were concerned about the swimming pools. They closed down the public swimming pools. But all his friends never got polio, and they also never swam in the swimming pools. George Carlin said they swam in the New York sewers, and they were healthier. But RFK Jr. posts photos swimming with his family in Washington, D.C.'s Rock Creek, which, by the way, fun fact, I've actually swam in Rock Creek when I lived in Maryland and West Virginia. I think this is the picture we're trying to find right here. And he took his granddaughter or his niece or something like that swimming. And this has been just the craziest amount of propaganda that I've seen in a minute. CNN and everyone else is just lambasting him, saying, hey,
despite warnings of high bacteria, this has to be a triple-sided psyop. I mean, what a joke is this?
I think that's a very good way to describe this, as a triple-sided psyop. I mean, the idea that is CNN trying to express the point that germ theory is a flawed theory, or are they, because it makes it pretty clear, obviously he's doing okay, his granddaughter's doing okay, and there's evidence that swimming in bacteria-rich creeks isn't killing everyone all the time, but they want to say that it's been a place where people were warned, stay out of the creek, stay out, because there's all this pollution, E. coli, etc. This is the new thing he's under fire for this week. So it's interesting that simultaneously he's talking about placebo effects of positive solutions or of common solutions. The water is alive. Yeah, I would agree with that for a number of reasons.
And also, of course, always shout out to Tommy Rogers. He says he's a SAG Screen Actors Guild actor. Of course, I don't know his lineage, so I don't know, who his true parents are. However, I guess by now one would have to say which truly famous politician is not part of the Screen Actors Guild. Trump resigned, I think, after his first presidency or something. I mean, that doesn't have to mean much, but always good to look out for that as well. Not make too many assumptions.
Gotta trust the unions, right? That's, where would we be without them? So here we get to Julia's channel. If you didn't hear earlier, we were talking about Julia, who's been on Team Rabbit Hole. She's doing her own videos now with Johnny Enoch. There's an episode or two recently done with Xirtus, and we were, Julia was a major part of the Hollow Earth Vice special we did. I love Julia. She's one of the greatest people ever. Make sure you go to Julia Commons' page. You can actually see that she does events and everything else as well. So highly recommend following her.
I recently heard she's also doing hypnotherapy sessions and things like that.
Remote viewing, yeah.
So of course,
great stuff.
That as well. So yeah, for some reason I put it in here. I'm not sure. Maybe even just to let her know again, I want to do a show with her on health and all these kind of things. But yeah, actually she made that video, and then I sent her this info about the water-soluble garlic we discussed earlier, and she's tried it. Even then she got it again, so I assume she didn't hate it. I really want to talk to her, see what she noticed, and because there she made her own video about practical home use garlic. Definitely important information to be aware of.
Yeah. So epic right there. Then and like we said, go to juliacommon.com so you can follow her. Amazing stuff. So then the next one, the man who made millions of dollars, I assume, from the fentanyl crises.
I was completely unaware of this. Now for a few years, fentanyl has been a huge topic in the US in particular. It appears to be an opiate that is hundreds of times stronger. And what I found curious about this documentary is you even have former marketing directors saying on camera that, yes, we were practically bribing doctors to prescribe it. And what I love the most about this, maybe go to about minute 10 or 15, you should see a lady with a headscarf.
Slow through here. There we go.
Yeah, here, there we are. And she's amazing because she was one of the many doctors that prescribed it during that period. Apparently, this company is now shut down, and they talk about the business practices. They set goals and were like, oh, you get special points or more money if you prescribe higher and higher doses. And she basically says, well, what's the issue? I would have prescribed them something anyways. So in this case, I just prescribed them something for which I would get some sort of a kickback. Not that financial motivation is ever present in the medical system. But on the one hand, you could say, oh, what a woman. She's just saying, well, I had 5 children, so I didn't mind cashing in the extra, in total $90,000, I guess, over a period of years. But she also says this probably was not so much money given the overall scheme. So that is very interesting. At the same time, it is kind of cool that she's willing to actually go on camera and confirm what many other people may have done and just openly talk about it. And I was completely unaware that this, I guess, Mr. Kapoor, it is all explained in this documentary, basically set up this company and set up all the systems with amazing funding to push this on the population to the extreme. So it also makes me wonder if this whole, oh, China is importing it or whatever, if that's a real thing or just a sideshow, or there is some story in the back end, if you actually had a big time investor and big companies, from what I can understand, registered and operating in the US that were allowed to push this for many years. And now you even have this documentary where they are clearly stating that they were using, how should I say that? Not perfectly standard business practices. Depends on what you consider standard, right?
I mean, that's exactly the problem. They were doing standard business practices, medical practices, which we should probably change. Not exactly Hippocratic practices. How about that? Can we agree?
Not hypocritical.
Yeah. All right. So The Man Who Made Millions from the Fentanyl Crisis, best documentary. Again, you can find these links on Comency.at down this list here. So then we're going to go to the next one. Let me go back here. All living things emit a ghostly glow that vanishes when you die, scientists reveal. Fun.
This was randomly sent to me recently, or I saw it somewhere, and what they say, and I only heard about this a few years ago in relationship to plants, that with the right cameras you can see that they emit a glow. This is generally called biophotons, and apparently since 3 days ago, this is now an accepted fact in human biology as well, that humans actually emit this type of a glow.
Fun.
And they were able to measure it with certain cameras. Of course, they have their own conclusions as to why and what it means. Is it evidence of a soul or not, or whatever else? But again, one thing that for the longest time you were maybe deemed insane if you were to perceive it, now it's a thing. So much for the intersection between magic and technology.
Intense biophotons produced by this mouse rapidly faded after death. So there does seem to be some correlation here. Pretty crazy. Yeah, I think biophotons is something that we should all be looking into more. All right. So that gets us to out of the bioelectricity section. And we're moving now into the more you know, which is, again, going to get us back to Chris Knowles on Philip K. Dick. And is this with... Let me just pull up these pages here. I like having my tabs open before we like start to spread through here. Oh, you see Expedition's going to come up too. Okay. So Chris Knowles' Secret Sun blog, another thing that if you didn't know he did, he's been having this incredible blog for, God, 20 years or something like that. And he talks about, like we kind of joked, cockatoo twins, but he's also been talking about just generally the occult in mainstream legacy society and, you know, like the Black Eye Club. Here it says, I really meme it this time. The astronauts and the Gnostic Nuggets, parasitic organism fastened to Katy Perry's face, insists spaceflight uneventful. You know, you'll love Chris. Secret Sun, Silver Lake, any questions? Am I the only, is that a good LA joke? I think that's pretty good. The ridiculous and extremely costly thrill ride that Katy Perry and the other Obama leftovers allegedly took last week has inspired howls of incredulity across the entire internet. But no more than that, than the meme makers. But before we get into the meme, we do check out this epic Under Silver Lake live stream, right? Silver Lake, Los Angeles. And the Secret Sun Institute for Advanced Synchromystics is the location here, which you can, you know, check out. Is a whole other thing going on. He's got a Patreon. Pretty cool stuff. But yeah, you brought this up. Is there something specific you wanted to show?
I just wanted to bring up his page because we interviewed him, or mainly Jim did recently, and also because when scrolling through, even though, again, I don't know all the pop culture references and so on, but I found the memes to be pretty funny and cool. Yeah. So I thought everyone should take a look at his site.
For sure. He also has the Secret Sun Facebook group, but everyone should be reading Secret Sun Blogspot. And I don't know. I think he's got to eventually do a Substack because I don't know. But this is how long this has been going on. Is the blog spots back in the day? All you needed was a blog spot, and there are again literally about 20 years of amazing posts, amazing information at the Secret Sun. So check it out. The next one was Giannis Varoufakis.
Yes, Yanis Varoufakis. So he was the finance minister for Greece during the 2008, I guess they call it real estate Lehman Brothers crisis. He seemed to be quite interesting. He was then more or less ousted from the government, which eventually, I can only assume, due to all kinds of pressure, accepted the deals by the European Union. What I found interesting here is that
he was friends with Nigel Farage and the Brexit. So that was kind of before BRICS was happening. So he was ahead of the curve, and that, put him maybe in the limelight to get taken down. If you come for the king, you better not miss, kind of a situation. But now look what's going on in Greece. I think we all miss Giannis. I'm just saying,
Actually, so one thing interesting here, there's many interesting points. I guess he even declares himself to be a leftist, whatever that means. People can agree or disagree with that.
I mean, I'm pretty sure that a lot of nationalists and socialists refer to themselves as leftists at some point, but I'm not saying it's bad to be a leftist either, right? Like he's a cool guy. I like him.
What he's openly stating in this video, which I find interesting, is he basically says, yes, Ukraine together with the US, whatever that means, blew up Nord Stream. The one thing it reminded me of is that there is a recent interview with Trump where someone is asking him, well, don't you want to investigate what happened to the Nord Stream pipeline? And he kind of says, oh, well, I guess I would just need to make some phone calls. There wouldn't be a need for a big investigation to find that out
pretty quickly. I mean, there's a reason why Ukraine's not allowed to be part of NATO, right? Like, I mean, it might happen someday, but it's so convenient to have para-NATO, proxy NATO states that you can, if you can't use NATO for something, then you can give money to one of these puppet states like the Ukraine to do the dirty work that because otherwise, World War III before we're ready, basically. There's a lot of questions you have to ask about that, and also Romania and Russia and like the proxy wars. There's just been, for the last 20 years, there have been so many proxy wars. I'm not saying that Pakistan and India is a proxy war. I'm just saying that there's been a lot of them. And the United States slipped from being a surplus country in its trade balance to having a deficit because he knew, historically speaking, every empire that went from being a surplus to a deficit economy entity started fading. He knows a lot. Definitely check out this conversation explaining, NATO, BRICS, China versus the United States. Okay, what about fake missing diary of Admiral Richard Byrd? Interesting. We're gonna talk about Antarctica.
Actually, yes, I'm actually not perfectly certain if I even properly watched that video, but it was something I was like, oh, something that everyone talks about may actually not be entirely real. I would not be surprised, and if I were a betting man, where I'd put my money on this. Of course, we spoke about Antarctica a lot with all the strange, Penguin Lodge 777, and God knows what else is going on there. Everyone relevant that ever went there seemed to be a Freemason, even as we showed, I believe, last episode. Even the organizer of the final experiment is, by his own admission, a traveling man. Right. And would you really be surprised if some of the documents we were given may not be entirely accurate, just as Anatoly Fomenko, David Ewing Jr., and many others have pointed out? Certain individuals just love to manufacture documentation in order to create narratives and obfuscate, divert, so on and so forth. So anyone who's into that, certainly worth to check out what is real and what is not. See, or nothing is real. Well, hopefully.
Yeah, or the real is nothing, Brazilian economy. So Chris Knowles on Philip K. Dick. This is with Aeon Bytes. Man, I've been thinking about Aeon Bytes more and more recently. I'm sorry, what's his name again? Someone told me I'm supposed to reach out and meet the guy who writes Aeon Bytes. What's his name again? Do you guys remember what I'm talking about?
I should actually know because Chris told me during the show we spoke about it.
Yeah.
But I
He's
forgot his name.
found him because he did Jason Giorgiani's interview, and it's Pompatus of Gnosis right here. He's freaking great. I love his work.
With your favorite Jason Giorgiani, no?
That's
Great,
how I
see?
found him originally.
Everything's coming together.
But he's come up so often recently because of his book, The Occult Elvis. Occult Elvis. Maybe if I just type that in, I can find his name. Miguel Connor. That's right. And we're gonna have to talk to him soon. Like I said, I've been watching more and more of his videos. I'm really fanatically supportive of his podcasts. I think his interviews are fantastic. Everything tells me that this book is incredible. Everyone is telling me this book is incredible. Anytime I mention it, another comment comes back that this book is incredible. And we've been talking about The Occult of Elvis for years, but this is the definitive book on it. Yeah, Kelly knows right now. Miguel, exactly. Miguel rules. Miguel rules. We agree. I totally agree. He seems like such a great, kind, wise, decent man. So just going to glaze him for a minute here. But I just picked up a copy of this, and I really think everyone should as well. I haven't finished it yet. But again, it's just such a fascinating subject. And yeah, Miguel Connor, he just knows what he's talking about, and he's a good listener. Let's definitely do a conversation with him soon. But brought up because where's it going? Was it right here? Was that the Aeon Bite? Let me go back here. Fake diary, bird abandoned. Is it this one here? No. How far back did I go?
Oh, it's the big one. It's the one embedded.
Oh yeah.
And that's basically just because Jim told me that we're gonna have Chris Knowles on, and I said, well, at least I have to watch something to get any idea. And I still have no idea, but this was very interesting because he's showing all these synchronistic correlations with these, as we said, Cocteau twins.
How did Chris become such a Chad? Doesn't he look like he works out now? Like, I don't know. He's got that like carnivore diet kind of face now. He didn't used to look so manly. Yeah, he's so manly looking. It's good job. But yeah, here's his kind of his conversation or his like kind of lecture on Philip K. Dick and the Sybil Astronosis. So something worth checking out for sure. I mean, again, Chris has done some amazing work. If you don't already know, then you should get involved and pay more attention to Chris. That's all I got to say. And yeah, Aeon Bites Gnostic. Not only am I subscribed, but I'm going to make sure that bell's rung. Because you know what? Like, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Abandoned Nickelodeon Studios, Florida. This always makes me sad. When I was a kid, they used to have on television Nickelodeon game shows. And there was always a kid about my age. And they're told, that they're going to win a pair of Skechers or a new bike or whatever it is. And they have to go to this beautiful Skechers, those shoes called Skechers. I don't even like Skechers, but when I was a kid, it was like, oh yeah, these are the shoes you could win. Hooray. And basically they made you at the end of the show, it's like, this is shot before, Nickelodeon's game show is shot before a live studio audience. Beautiful, sunny, wonderful Orlando, Florida. And me in, podunk, nowhere, Silicon Valley, the center of the universe, thought to myself, why am I living here in like Santa Cruz, this crummy paradise? I want to go to Orlando. Because if you're 5 years old to 10 years old and you're watching Nickelodeon, they make it sound so great. Well, it's a freaking swamp. No offense to Floridians, but you know what you know where you're from. It's a swamp. And there's all these freaking swamp characters. And I'm not just talking about the alligators. And the fact that they're getting kids, desperate kids, usually the most desperate ones they can find from the Midwest, to fly out to the God-forsaken middle of nowhere in a swampland so they can be inside of this freaking terrifying building that, they built a Sumerian temple pseudo warehouse in the middle of a swamp that you basically can't, you're there, you can't leave, you get stuck there. I mean, I'm so grateful that I never ended up at the Orlando studios, but yeah, this place now, at the time, looked amazing. Like, you can see why me as a kid would have wanted to go there. Look at that, bright colors and splatters of neon toxic waste with zebra print, and it's perfect. It's perfectly modeled to get kids like me to think this is the dream, to go to the Nickelodeon studio. I really, really wanted to go. Well, you can now. You can just wander in there, and it looks like trash now.
In
It's just
German
completely
speaking
destroyed.
regions during that time, for some reason, we still mostly had reruns of some somewhat decent, either, you know, still even Bugs Bunny or all kinds of, you know, Japanese early 90s, late 80s animations. So Nickelodeon kind of wasn't such a big deal in German speaking regions on TV during that time. But yeah, basically whatever you just said was everything I wanted to discuss about this. I just found it hilarious, and I knew you would have something to say about it.
Oh, it's so sad though. Like again, like this is the building, right? So if you go, I'll show you that picture again. Where was the front of the building here? This beautiful building. There we go. It used to look like my mouse won't move slow enough. It used to look like this, bright colors, everything else. But when you really pay attention, you notice it's just actually kind of a boring building, and they've turned it into this really beige nothing of a building here. I mean, it's actually painted white and forgotten. There's no semblance of what it used to be. So it's kind of a tragedy in some sense. But when you know how much more of a tragedy the lives of the children at the Nickelodeon studios were, and you start to understand why their symbol was this sort of a cosmic meta of a spilled yolk, or, you know, often anything you wanted, it could be this weird submarine logo. And then I just saw it for a second. There was the Nickelodeon foot. Did you see that? I'll just type it in. Nickelodeon foot. You know, because like that has nothing to do with pedicures. We're just gonna say what kind of children's media is into the all right, you get my point. Anyway, Aeon Bytes, like this is what we were showing you earlier, is the God above God. This is Miguel Connor's Gnostic Radio Aeon Bytes page. And just in case you didn't know, get in there as well. All right. And then Admiral Byrd abandoned Nickelodeon Studio. Now to the Mennonites. This is a group of Anabaptist Christians. You wanted to bring them up for a reason? Are they Swiss?
Yeah.
What do you like about them?
No, I'm sure you know a lot more about them than I do. I just recently heard they apparently are also quite well known in Paraguay, of all places.
For sure.
That's all I want to mention, basically, because I don't know. But they're quite respected there, which in Paraguay is important because you have all kinds of strange people. Also, from the contacts I have, I only hear that even many of the recent immigrants from German-speaking countries or whatever, many of those are not to be trusted. From what I understand, this is also because Paraguay does not really have extradition treaties with many countries. Yeah. So it's like one of these in-between things, which certainly serve as a playground for potentially shady individuals. But the Mennonites have a reputation.
There's a lot of freedom in Paraguay, but the Mennonites, you know, like what's his name again? Is something Menno Simons. He was a contemporary of Martin Luther from Switzerland, who taught about Anabaptist Christianity, which is sort of the idea that you have to choose to be baptized. You can't just be baptized as a baby and count that as baptism, which they were doing when kids were dying all the time. They didn't want you to go to hell. You know, they believe you have to be baptized. Let's just throw some water on a baby. Mennonites are not into that. They're more into, you have to realize to some extent what you're believing in order to be baptized. From the Mennonites come the Amish. The Amish are an extreme form of Mennonites, but the Mennonites are already kind of, in this day and age, you can consider them, I wouldn't say exactly extreme, but they're pretty strict, right? And they have farms. They have kind of their own communities. You can see a lot of Mennonites in Switzerland, a lot of Mennonites in Pennsylvania, a lot of Mennonites across the United States. And they eventually found their way to a country, because the whole point of the Mennonites are that they are self-sustaining, autonomous, independent. They take care of their own, and they don't need to have social services from government. So they don't fit in super well in fascist dictatorships that want to take half of your paycheck in order to have a fire. And you know the word radical, right? Like mathematically, the radical.
The radix is the root. That's all.
Getting to the root. They're getting to the root of the problem, and they love. And this is one of the reasons Paraguay is so perfect for them. They were looking for a place they could go. They tried Belize, you know, British Honduras. They've been to Mexico. There's a lot of them trying to find good farming land somewhere where they're allowed to just be left alone and do their own thing. And I loved it when I got to Paraguay, and I noticed you see these very Christian people with their handmade clothing. They're all sewing their outfits themselves, very modest, very demute, and they wear kind of their head scarves and everything. I could totally imagine David Ewing Jr. going off on a fanatical rant, adoring and glazing them the same way he does about Islam. There's no reason to hate on the
what
Mennonites.
I thought of now. Yes.
Yeah,
No,
I like
and I wasn't
lot.
suggesting that. I was actually
No.
saying that they are one group that have a very good reputation in Paraguay. So
yeah,
yes.
I remember one time I was at this desert festival and everyone was doing these crazy psychedelic drugs, and there was this beautiful go-go dancer girl who happened to be an escaped Mennonite from Pennsylvania. And this happens. I think you have the most extreme people that come out of the Mennonites to some extent, but look into them. They're pretty cool. That was basically just the Paraguay thing?
Yeah. That's it. Yes.
Cool. Based. All right. Boeing X-37. So the orbital test vehicle. This is the drone that was announced at some point. I think we started seeing the X-37B2 was in the sky for 300 and some odd days and came out of the sky sometime after the Flight 370. I remember people associating X-37B with Flight 370 to some extent. I think there's also a conspiracy about time travelers with the X-37B. Is there something you wanted to bring up about this? I mean, Qatar, Boeing, Air Force One. What was the sync that was leading you to this?
Yeah, I only bring it up because I've been stumbling across a channel by the name of Stephen Cambrian, I believe. And what he's been doing recently is like 4 to 6 hour shows on David Wilcock. And potentially, I can't say in detail, but potentially rightfully criticizing Wilcock for certain statements, certain practices, and so on. And this was just an aside where someone said, oh, all this is fake or whatever. And then he said, oh, no, look at this particular vehicle. It can actually, I'm not sure if it would be appropriate to say go to space or something. But yeah, just put it there because I thought like, oh, I never heard about this particular.
Yeah, it's a drone. And there's a number of modern versions of this. The Atlas V, I think, is another example of a drone rocket based on this. But it's very much plane shaped, right? And you can see how it's a rocket with a glider, essentially a glider rocket. Yeah, I mean, they could put people in the X-37B, I believe. It's not sure if they
This is great
did,
CGI.
Oh yeah,
That's
it's
a nice
not.
one.
But this is
That's
because
classic graphics. Yes,
in
this is a good
1990,
one.
this is from 1999. This rendering, right? So it's not the physical real one. This is the picture I remember. Is the photograph of it once it landed or something, because it had been in the sky for over a year and a half. That was kind of the thing that really excited people about it. Was I think, let's see here, 2006 X-37 flew again, data link failure. 37B test transferred to the Delta 7920. 2010 manufacturing work. Okay. October 8th, 2014, NASA confirmed X-37B vehicles will be housed at the Kennedy Space Center and orbital facilities. I think this is it. Speculative regarding purposes. What was I going to say? Processing, design. Let's see, days. Can I put that in? 780 days. Okay. The subsequent flights gradually extended the mission duration, reaching 780 days in orbit for the 5th mission. That's the one that really excited people. So this was in the sky for a long time. I guess I haven't been paying attention. The 6th mission launched on the Atlas V in 2020 and concluded 2022 at 908 days in orbit. So there's been some pretty impressive like
Well, it's
long
also funny.
durations.
They want to say that the same, or maybe a revision of the same thing, is still in operation 25 years later. Okay.
Yeah, to some extent. I mean, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I mean, in certain levels, this is all you really. How much are you going to improve on the aerospace design? The main things you can improve upon are the technology of flying a drone like this. But if it's a radio drone, then really that improvement could be done at the Kennedy Center. As long as on Earth your computers are updating, that's all you need to. This is essentially a remote control car, right?
Mhm.
So this the Reich had radio controlled intercontinental ballistic missiles back in the early 40s, late 30s. This is not something that's super impressive on its own. The most impressive thing is its capacity to withstand elemental issues like extremely low frequency and high radiation belt and particle blasts. Anything that we're supposed to be afraid would destroy something like this, and that they could just take a beating and keep on ticking, basically. So that's why everyone's impressed with like a near 3-year orbit. If you get a rocket to stay up in the sky for nearly 3 years, I'll be impressed with you. All right, then Robert Sapolsky. What about Robert Sapolsky? I think we've seen him on Joe Rogan. He's an interesting character, talking about everything from neuroendocrinology, biology, and even he's brought up anthropology as well.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I may have brought him up because it says endocrinology related to stress. Maybe just go to his main theories, then I may remember why I put him there.
Okay. Career, is there a personal one? Views?
Oh no, he's got no.
Well, in
Yes?
views, in a podcast with Light Watkins called Neuroscientist: How to Escape the Rat Race with Robert Sapolsky. Sapolsky says that after learning in a synagogue about how God, quote, hardened Pharaoh's heart, he woke up one night at 2 a.m. as a teenager and said, "Oh, I get it. There is no God and there's no free will." That's what it was. His theory is like the no free will theory. He's been really pushing that free will doesn't exist. The universe is a big, empty, indifferent place. And that's kind of where I've been ever since. Yeah, I think that's interesting. He started out as the son of a Soviet atheist family of Jews raised in the United States. And from there, he started his theories. If you type in free will Sapolsky, you'll find the articles why free will doesn't exist according to Robert Sapolsky and the New Scientist. If you're interested in free will, we've done conversations in the past with Joseph Smith's great-great-grand Seth Garrett, and Seth's talked about the lack of free will as well. I think we've done a couple debates, even kind of debates about, or discussions on the channel about free will, and pointed out Sapolsky's ideas. I think there's a range of will that can be obviously there's limits to what you can experience in terms of free will, and everything's built up in terms of what range of probabilities are out there. But we might be maximalizing and extending and capitalizing on that rigidity to create free will. I think free will might be emergent. Still, it's worth looking into Sapolsky for that. Is that
somehow makes me think of the Mennonites again, or Anabaptists, if they say, well, you actually should however free that choice then is, but at least have some sentience and conscious awareness.
Anabaptists are far more into free will than Calvinists. I think that's another reason why I like them. 2 points to the Anabaptists and the Amish and the Mennonites. So then one of our friends, Leo Zagami, just a plug if you haven't already seen this conversation. I thought it was funny because I had planned on, you see this at the beginning of the conversation, the flex. I felt really proud of this. We named this video a couple days before we made the video, right? This was a live stream conversation, but we set it to premiere and to do this, 2 days earlier, 3 days earlier, I'd labeled the video. I knew what we were talking about. Leo was coming on and we were going to talk about his new book and the new Pope, and he was going to predict who the new Pope was going to be and what the new Pope was going to be. I called the video Pope Leo, right? And of course, that means we were the first, by a long shot, by several days, first place in the world, I think, that anyone was saying Pope Leo. Even if you had some weird foresight that Robert Prevost was going to become the Pope, it was not possible that you could know he was going to pick the name Leo, I don't think. So, a little flex there. Good for us. A main point of this video is that Prevost has come off as some sort of a MAGA supporter, and that's debunked here by Leo. Essentially, the more you look into Robert Prevost, you see he is, like most Jesuits, critical of something, then you interfere with that thing, right? I did the same thing. For a long time, I was registered in California as a Democrat so I could vote in the Democratic primaries. It's not like I liked anything they did. It's actually the opposite. I just wanted to have some say in what they did because of how screwed up it was. That doesn't mean that that's the best way to do that, the best mechanism. But essentially, that's what Provost, I think, has been doing, and what Leo was saying. He's interfering with the president. He's been interfering. Pope Leo has been interfering with the vice president. He constantly is criticizing J.D. Vance. So, all right, just if you're interested in that, because half of the internet saying, "Oh God, we love the Pope so much. He's this MAGA Republican supporter who posts and tweets Kanye West music and everything." I'm like, I think
I'll
you
have
might
to
be
say
missing the
yeah,
point. Yeah.
people may be missing a lot, and anytime, even with main political pundits in Austria, but it seems similar in the US, in anything that is remotely mainstream and even partially the alternative mainstream, I'm always at a loss when people are glazing, like, the British royal family or whatever new super exalted, well, including presidents, but especially with the Pope, where it's always like there everyone comes together and they all think, oh, they're so great because maybe they have good PR and say certain things, but nobody ever cares to look into their backgrounds. One of the fun things I saw, I'm sure you've also seen it before, is apparently this guy who is now playing the Pope, and let's not forget, he's the vicar of Christ. And if you go down the David Ewing Jr. rabbit hole and the whole humanism thing, Jesus is God, the Pope is the representative of Christ. Basically, the Pope is God. And there's even, forged or not, medieval documents where the Pope is proclaiming, I don't only own everything that you can possibly see, but also, by the way, I'm God, Papa, the Pope.
Of course.
But anyways, he was supposedly, apparently, the stunt double or something for Alien versus Predator in
No,
89.
so I wish
Or
that
is
were
is
true.
this or is this not true? Well, then please
Yeah,
debunk
it's
it, because I
really
was like, this would be too crazy.
It's a really funny AI post, but I think the reason it's so funny is because then you want to if you wanted to cite your sources, you want to check to debunk something, and how would you go about searching about whether or not the Pope was in Predator or not? You would have to
Well,
type in.
IMDb would
Well,
not be so hard. I didn't check it.
you
So.
might exactly. If you were gonna, you'd probably Google his name and the word Predator, Pope Leo and Predator. What do you think comes up when you type in the Pope and Predator?
Because that would be the other part of it, which I actually wanted to allude to, which I
Right.
cannot possibly verify. But the thing is, there were similar things with the last Pope and even with the one before and before that and so on. And it seems anytime these elections happen, it's of course particularly funny to watch on a regular public broadcast, like, for example, the Austrian state broadcasting, with the big I, which we've shown before. We will actually look at some of the media later related to other things. But then you always have these newscasters sitting there solemnly and like, oh, we're waiting for the white smoke to emerge. And then we're very sorry, we will even move our regularly scheduled news broadcast because today the new Pope got elected. And they all solemnly sit there. And I'm like, wow, am I happy I don't have their jobs, So this is incredible.
So I think this is the one. Time Magazine even brings up, Pope Leo's name carries a warning about the rise of AI because of the fake news about the Predator thing. But as soon as you type in Pope Leo Predator or Robert Prevost Predator, you're going to see that victims are alleging that Pope Leo the 14th mishandled sexual abuse cases involving priests in both Chicago and Peru. I brought this up the day he became the Pope on Adam Krigler's show because, as someone who was raised Catholic, a major problem in our lifetime was leaders of the American Catholic Society specifically, but also just the Catholic Church around the world, taking priests who were child molesters and moving them around, just changing where they're located because there wasn't internet yet. So, hey, we just found this guy who's a real problem for our community. We should do something. Oh, yeah, take that guy, disappear him into another community that's never heard of the problems, and then he can go back to doing what he was doing before. And with Robert Prevost, he not only did this in Chicago, but eventually left Chicago, went back to Peru because he'd been living in Peru in 85 to 86 or something like that. And he got citizenship in 2015. And lo and behold, the same thing was going on in Peru. So it's one thing to maybe have been, I mean, we would like to say, oh, he could have done more in Chicago, or, oh, maybe he just wasn't naive to the situation, or maybe it's super complicated and we don't completely understand. Maybe it's beyond the faculties of the plebeians to understand these chomos in the Vatican. But it gets worse and worse when you see this guy creating a pattern, right? A pattern that exists even outside of where maybe Chicago's the problem, maybe the Peru's the problem. No, it's the whole meta that's the problem.
But then overall, and especially considering that you would reasonably assume that many of the cardinals, not to say elector princes, that have the official capacity to elect or select the new pope would be completely unaware of all of these issues. And assuming they are not completely unaware of it, think of it, you can assume, well, maybe not all of them, but that many of your also local state highest level priests, well, they are aware of it. They're not, and whether they voted for him, even more so if they voted against him, no one is saying a single word about this. So yeah, make of it what you will, but so much for
Zarovich, the Pope. Zarovich says the Pope is the custodian of the God that will never return. My God, bro, that's the most Slavically dark-pilled thing you've said all day. And I've heard you quite a bit today.
Well, maybe better if he never returns, that type of God. So
well, let me also point out, so because there was I like to say that I'm so cool because I predicted the title Pope Leo, and I'm just lucky, I guess, because Leo's, we were going to talk about this, and so the universe made it happen. But I had seen a show a year or two earlier, which had been out, I think, since about the time Trump was president, which was called The Young Pope from HBO. Have you seen the show with Jude Law as the American who becomes the Pope? This show came out. Everyone's talking about Conclave, their transgender intersex Pope show.
Right.
Don't care. But the thing I do care about was Young Pope. This show is incredible. And the sequel season, the second season, has John Malkovich as the new Pope, where John Malkovich brings literally Marilyn Manson to the Vatican. And there's an interview between Marilyn Manson and the Pope. Highly recommend the show. Let me just say that the first season is incredible because it starts out with this American who's made the Pope because they think he'll be innocuous, and he becomes anything but because he decides to change his name. He has a nightmare the first night that he's telling people to become liberal California Catholics, essentially, and that they should start using birth control and things like that. The nightmare freaks him out. He decides to choose, every Pope gets to choose their own name ever since Pope Mercurius, right? I think it was the first one. He didn't want to be named after, he thought it was wrong to take a Greek god or something to make that the name of your Pope. So he took a Christian name.
Let's not make it too blatantly obvious. So,
right, exactly.
A little bit better.
Exactly. And so the name that the Pope chooses really matters. Right? I think this is why Pope Leo is such an interesting thing. If you go to Pope Leo the 13th, Pope Leo the 13th, this guy right here from the 1870s, actually is the first Pope that we have film of and the oldest person filmed in history. So he's you could say the timeline or the beginning of history starts with this film history of this Pope. And he was known as being kind of an anti-Marxist, but was he really? He was definitely associated with the Jesuit neo liberation theology. Everyone's been arguing with me about who's the most Jesuit Pope or how Jesuit is this Pope.
Well, it's perfect. You talked about interference and are playing all sides. Isn't it great if you have your lackeys, do whatever shenanigans, communism, they had relations with the Reich as well and all of these things. And then you can sit up on your high throne and be like, oh, I'm really against all that kind of war and stuff, It's like,
exactly.
Sure you are.
Right. Notice right here, Pope Leo the 13th is wearing the papal coronation crown, the papal tiara. You see this crown he's wearing here? So the papal tiara, which has been stored in the Smithsonian, gifted to the Smithsonian, essentially. This is the most important. This is the Godhead. This is the God crown that you have to wear. You can see it in the symbol of the freaking coat of the arms of the Holy See, right? No one seems to understand how important this particular squid helmet is to the Catholic Church, except for in this series. So Jude Law has that nightmare. He becomes the Pope anyway, and he chooses his name. And instead of Leo for the tribe of Judah or something like that, he chooses the name Pope Pius, right? Pope Pius, who was associated with the Reich. It was Pope Pius who had made the deal with the Reich originally, and then eventually betrays the Germans and makes a deal with the CIA or the OSS at the time in the United States. The crown was then donated to the Smithsonian. Jude Law's character refuses to have his coronation as Pope until he gets the crown back. He demands the Smithsonian return the crown. And when he places it upon his head and tells everyone he's Pope Pius, then he begins this purge within the Vatican City. And he declares, as you said, very much as David Ewing Jr. points out, that he is God on earth by proxy, and that you belong to God, therefore by proxy you belong to me, right? And he begins to, I mean, this show and this speech that he makes as Pope Pius is so tyrannical, it almost made me want to be Catholic again. It's just that intense. It's that didactic of a control. And so if you're interested in what might be some sort of predictive programming about the American Pope, this is the place to start. And I'm hoping there's some truth to it, because the basic premise of the show, without getting too into the specificities, is that he's pretty upset at the pedophiles in the Catholic Church, and he's going after them. He's going after all the sinning and corruption within the Vatican, something that we've been promised since Francis, right? That there would be some sort of a cleanup. Leo Zagami had said that Pope Francis would be the last pope. And so some people were saying that Leo Zagami missed the ball by there now being this new pope. Well, what the heck is an American pope who tweets? And how similar is that to any pope we've had before? It is a new day. It is a change. And it's something that's completely divorced from the Sicilian mafia of Italy that runs the Vatican. However, it's also, he's from Chicago, right? Chicago being one of the most important mafia epicenters of the United States. So I've been calling Pope Leo the mafia pope or the mob pope. I think it's worth considering it that way. Anyway, check out the young pope. It's a really important show to me. Then anti-Trumpian Pope Leo video here. This is from Leo Zagami. This
don't need to read it out, but I just wanted to mention that, yeah, he's been
doing.
doing
Need to
more,
read it out. What a title!
He's been doing more shows, and he has his own channel as well. So if you want to go deeper into what you guys discussed, you can also check out Leo's channel.
It was just
I really
his
have to say,
recently,
I just, oh yeah,
happy
Leo's birthday.
Yeah,
happy birthday.
And he's got this wonderful wife, and this wife of his makes amazing pasta. So he ends this video by saying, you know, of all the books you should buy, you got to check out.
Exactly. Yes, I saw this. Yes,
his mafia. He's a mafia pasta cookbook, the Illuminati antipasta. Honestly, it's one of my prized possessions. I gotta say, you need this book. You need the cookbook. Okay, the Leo Zagami cookbook's incredible. All right, so make sure you're subscribed to Leo Zagami show. What am I not? What the heck is going on here? I must have just unsubscribed because I've always been subscribed. He's one of my favorite people. Okay, and then here's the game we've all been playing, Expedition 33. I'm going to also point out, if you go to Asmongold, he's been playing this game, and he's calling it back to my favorite game. This changes everything. Like, he's so into, I mean, this is my favorite YouTube gamer, I suppose you could say, and he's done some pretty interesting controversial takes on things before, but he's convinced that Expedition 33 is the game of the year. And it's a game that had, what was it, like 33 people that made the game, and it's all turn-based strategy, and it has a really brilliant world. I was surprised at how incredible the graphics were. I mean, it's pretty decent.
Yeah, because the thing is, and you can even see it here, that's also what I like to point in the video, how it originally looked. Of course, they just made prototypes, and here you can see all this development cycle, the synchronicities that led to it. The open question still is, why is it Expedition 33? You know, who is supporting it? I mean, they're on Microsoft Game Pass and stuff like that. But just from an artistic point of view, it is quite amazing. And also what you can really tell, especially with these Unreal Engine games, you know, they have like these prefab things, and they even show that this is how they made the prototypes. But what they managed to do properly, and this is the main thing I always love about games, of course, if it's a good story, interesting systems and so on, but to actually have an art direction and UI design that everything appears seamless. And you cannot tell anymore that it's made from whatever prefabs and things like that, because too many games just look too generic because of that. But here they did everything right. And yeah.
So you've been playing this game a bit, correct? So you've seen this,
right?
And you get the kind. So the idea is that there is a kind of a world where everyone, it's like Logan's Run, a world where everyone old is dead. I think it's like everyone above the age of 33 or something are dead and or disappeared. And then you have a sort of a group called Expedition 33, which is going out and trying to figure out what's happening in this world that is causing the deaths of these older people, and why everyone's young. It's sort of the disconnect from later history. And there's a lot of symbolism that I've noticed so far just by watching as you look, because I haven't gotten there deep in the game, but Asmongold's gotten pretty far, and you can see a lot of the sort of silicon tree molding to the story as well. There's a lot to this game. I think
actually has some, I would even say, Elden Ring vibes. This guy is pretty amazing. You can tell he's a nerd, because he's like the music producer. And I think the music is really well done and kind of achieved the goal of evoking emotions, especially when you have such a dramatic story. And then, without spoilering too much, but you also have quite a few of these, like, you know, fourth wall breakage then. And what I find particularly interesting is that it seems that the story, as far as I can tell, I mean, God knows, so many stories are actually rehashes of something too old for any to remember. But at the very least, it's not the new superhero trope or whatever. So it's an actually original story. And what I do hope,
it's like they're making
overall,
everything else suck just so that this game would be that much better than everything else. It's, you know.
Yeah, exactly. And what I do hope is that maybe now again there can be smaller teams with moderate funding or whatever
There freaking
that
have
can
to be
produce high quality stuff, because all the what the
It's the only
so-called
way.
AAA games have produced is slop basically for the past 10
But
years or more.
This shows you where it's going because of the asset packs available with Unreal Engine. Any group of, you know, 6 to 30 people, and probably not many more than that. I don't think you want a team more than 30 people. You could maybe get 100 people working on a game, but remember, the more people you have working on a project, the less likely it is to succeed, to function, to exist, or be coherent. And that's been the experience people have been having with video games. I will say this also, that, you know, games like Cyberpunk are really interesting and novel, but they had just disgustingly boring and terribly done, in my opinion, audio voiceover acting. Expedition 33 has some of the best voiceover acting.
Oh yeah, really does.
I've heard in a game in years. So it's just really masterfully done, super artistic. These aren't completely independent people. This has got studio money backing it. And these are all people that come off of other projects from, I think these are like people who quit or were fired or left Oblivion, for instance. But
Ubisoft,
they're Ubisoft, and a number of them are not necessarily. It's not like this is maybe their first project where they had a say in what they were doing, right? So it's really kind of a beautiful expression of everything. Have you seen Schedule 1, by the way? Have you been playing that game?
I haven't been playing it, but I saw it and people are going crazy about it.
Yeah, Schedule 1 is an anomaly because it's a crafting sim about being a drug dealer. And so on so many levels, it's controversial, but it's artistic and beautiful. And it's making its rounds as being, I think this game is kind of the secret #1 game of the year, because this is the game that everyone's playing and everyone loves playing and are enjoying playing. It's getting high replay value. And it's all made by one person. So I think we're going to start seeing a lot of that. One-person games are happening as well. So that's pretty cool. All right. So now we just got through the more you know. Let's go to history. So history, we're going to get to Benjamin Bilal. Let me just pull up the rest of them so we can pass on through to the next part here. Oh, I love that you brought up the AI generated North Korean video. We'll look at that. So instructor Benjamin Bilal. Let's start with that. What did you want to show
Yeah,
here?
so maybe you just go on popular actually, because I think it's one of the most popular videos. I only checked out one of his presentations. This was pointed out to me by someone commenting on David Ewing Jr. videos, most likely. And it was just interesting. Let me see. Go on popular, please.
Yeah, here we are, popular.
And yeah, it's already open because that's the one I wanted. Allah's Throne, the second one actually, because in Dr. Omar Ramani, and of course interesting things, they talk about the different words and the meaning and so on. From what I can tell, both of them are followers of, now I should say it correctly, the Quran or the Prophet Muhammad, or however you want to say it. But what I found interesting is that pretty close to the beginning, the dear doctor here points out that he recently realized, for example, that the numbering system for the chapters in the Quran actually was recently invented. And that is one of the things that David Ewing Jr. also points out, that while he can do interesting synchronicity with these chapters and verses, but as so many things, this has also been created or manufactured in a particular way for the modern consumption. And aside from that, from what I understand, the guy mainly goes into the meaning of different words, but I'm not well versed enough to explain a lot about it. But anybody who is interested in this, they may want to check this guy out, because it seems, how should I say, at least to be an independent researcher, you know, and not beholden to anything in particular.
Excellent. Yeah, let's I'll watch this and maybe we'll consider reaching out because he sounds like an interesting character. Benjamin Bilal, everybody. Instructor Benjamin Bilal. Let me subscribe right here and recommend you do it as well. He has a website, newneticsinstitute.com. If you end up watching his stuff, do us a favor. Comment on his videos that you would like to see him have a conversation with Raphael and I.
Exactly. Do that everywhere, you know, everyone you
everywhere.
Like, their hashtag Xirtus.
Please freaking do. Okay. So then the next one was Mind Unveiled Spain, Tartaria's capital. I find this funny. 4 days ago, he made this video. As you might recall, I was calling Spain Tartaria's capital in what, 2017? When did we do the Spain trip? It was a long time ago. We went to Spain to do this, and that was our research originally.
Right, so that's the, you know, time it takes to trickle down for original research and then someone to produce a documentary style video about
and
it.
Not to flex, right? But like exactly, like awesome, corroborated, super glad to see Mind Unveiled doing this video. We love this work.
Yeah, I don't have too much to comment on it, but everyone can check it out. And these, because the Mind Unveiled videos usually are quite high production quality. So anybody who has more than a 5-minute attention span, but they want something, you know, really well-rounded and thought out, you can usually refer to them to a Mind Unveiled video. There's even at least one which is called Jesus Spoke Arabic, where they are specifically referencing David Ewing Jr.'s work as well. So, and giving him a proper shout out.
Amazing work. So then the next one is Mysteries of the Colosseum from the History, Science, or Fiction channel.
Yes, so there's by now, I think, 6 pieces on this. I'll have to rewatch this. I just saw some comments even on my chat now, I'm not exactly sure, where people said, yes, there's something strange going on with the Colosseum. I can't even summarize it here now, but there is, like, if you go on the channel itself, where I'm still completely flabbergasted. I found recently a German version of the channel, also less than 1,000 subscribers. And I'm like, how is this even possible? Because in Russia, you even have literally presidential candidates that even against Putin achieve 10% of the vote. And they openly talk about Anatoly Fomenko. And still in the West, it's like, oh, you're insane. It's too far out. Why we cannot, you know, doubt everything. And I'm like, well, you have to start with equal skepticism.
You got to doubt everything.
Handle on anything at all.
You got to doubt it all.
Confused. I mean, not confused, but it's completely insane to me how they have so little subscribers and so little views on these videos. And the translations usually are pretty well done. They're quite understandable. It's always, at least for me, a pleasure to listen to Fomenko or Nosovsky explain their perspectives. And yeah, I can only endlessly repeat, if anyone wants to get a handle on history at all, even if you don't believe it, at least make sure you know how to debunk this. And if you do, you know, comment on our videos. I want to hear about it, because so far I haven't heard about it. So this seems to be a good track to investigate.
And let me also take a second here to say thank you guys for remembering up. Calyx is back. Gematria Brigade is now a YouTube member. Joe Wallace has just become a YouTube member again. And then we got, let me see here. Wait. Stefan says, I've been using my membership chat to ask if Raph, if you might have seen Minesweeper or heard any rumblings about how half-cooked the animation was. Thank you, Stefan. Base Kothar, $10. Thank you for the support. We really love it. We really need it and really appreciate it. I appreciate everything you do. Glad it seems kind of mutual. All right, let's pop to Ivan the Terrible.
Just to answer, Stefan, I haven't seen the Minecraft movie. I'll have to check it out, and maybe I can comment on it. I'll make it a point to watch it, because I know Eddie's been working on it too, which in itself should be enough reason to.
Is that what you mean when you say Minesweeper? You're trying to make some sort of like a.
I'm thinking of Minecraft.
That's what I thought, but maybe he's trying to be clever, because maybe he's succeeding at being clever, because maybe I'm not being clever
creeper
enough.
Sweeper.
Yeah, right. So Ivan the Terrible and Peter the Great, the imaginary czar and the false czar. This is Serge Bilababa's channel here, right?
Yeah, this is just more new chronology information with this very charming lady of the New Chronology Museum, in this case interviewing Nosovsky. I still won't claim I completely grasp everything they say, but it's certainly worth checking out if you're interested in history. In this case here, talking about these czars and who is real, who is not, who is manufactured, where is the obfuscation, and it appears to be everywhere.
Excellent. Serge Belababa right here. And yeah, the next one being this has got froze on the title here. Okay, Chinese tourists go crazy. China Insider with David Zhang.
So I'm not sure if I remember what it. Right. So this is what this is about. This is kind of curious, because here apparently they're reenacting the Chinese fighting against the Japanese imperialists. I think that's the main thing I wanted to point out. And I'm like,
and they gave him a little dash. Look, see, he's the bad guy. Yeah.
But don't you have? Because I always find it interesting, people criticizing China. It's really difficult for me to tell from an outside perspective, also because China is such a vast country. And then especially if you would use the main criticism points you have, which may be valid, and then look for the same issues in westernized countries, I'm not exactly sure, if the West is really that, much better or is so much freer. And don't you also in the US regularly have Civil War enactments? Because that's what it kind of reminded me of. So don't you also there have this, I'm not sure how to say it, and I don't know what the general vibe is. If the idea is, oh, look, we were fighting, we don't want to fight ever anymore, aside from the fact that the Civil War in the US is concurrent with civil wars and Republican revolutions across the entire known surface area, which makes it very suspicious in terms of official history. But I'm just wondering, what is the vibe that is given off of Civil War reenactments? Is the message that America should be strong and stay united, or is it also this idea of, in a certain way, denouncing certain ideology, like maybe here with the Japanese? Oh, great! You have a South Park. Well, that's going to summarize it.
For the first time I was in Germany, when I was 9 or 10 years old, I was at some sort of a bar food place, and on the television was South Park in German, and the episode was the Civil War reenactment episode, where the Civil War reenactment is the famed summer or winter or spring, I think spring event in South Park or in Colorado, and it's sponsored by some sort of a schnapps alcohol company, and so everyone's having a grand old time, getting super drunk, and the winners are winning and the losers are losing. But finally they get so drunk they realize, wouldn't it be great if we didn't lose this time? So they start fighting the war and winning each one of the battles in the reenactments. The Confederates do, until they get all the way to Bill Clinton, And Bill Clinton essentially just surrenders the United States to the Confederacy. However, because the children are doing the reenactment, they're able to reenact being President Lincoln and I guess Confederate President Lee. No, what's his name again? Davis, President Davis. And they sign some sort of a treaty. I feel like the American Civil War reenactments are not what they used to be, but in the 90s they were extremely popular in zeitgeist. And generally, I think they're fun as heck. Everyone should go to a reenactment. What I like is the Chinese reenactments can be without context when they're about Western incidents. I've seen reenactments, I don't know if the reenactment's the right word at that point, where in China they have, an entire legion of stormtroopers from Star Wars versus a legion of stormtroopers from the Third Reich. So you'll have German, SS outfits, and you have Star Wars Disney outfits, and they'll fight together. I think that's pretty cool.
In the US, you have that, because in Germany you'd get arrested.
In China, they do, because they lack context. But maybe they have a better context for the Japanese War. I mean, they're being pickled. So Dirty Harry says this. I think I missed his comment last time, but you brought this up before. Andreas, have you seen some of these think tank episodes, and all of the titles are so pointless? Why should anyone ever bother to click on the videos? Well, I'll explain. They should bother to, because I'm making the videos. That's the reason, because I think I like me. But if you don't like the titles, please send me better titles. If you say, hey, I think a better title for this video would be this thing, I will consider it. And maybe we'll do a thing where we use both. It'll be called, Esoteric Rainbow Agenda, whatever the hell I want to call it. And we'll put the word "or" and then Dirty Harry's title, like a video about international events or something. I mean, if you want to label something in a clear and reasonable way so other people can understand it, that's not my taste, but I'm willing to do it. There's no reason we can't. I'm a big fan of esoteric titles that I can just remember. For me, these titles are super meaningful, and I get that they're not for you, and I'm totally fine with that. Both to continue doing it because I don't really care, but also I care about you. So like, if you want, we can change. We can work together. Just let me know if you want to call the video something else. I'm fine with that. I really don't care what you call my videos.
What I'm thinking of, just re-upload it on another channel and then see how much the video actually gets recommended. So anybody who would not understand the esoteric title would actually have the chance to randomly click on it. That's what I'm thinking.
No, but I'm super keen on the
target group appropriate.
Yeah, if you it might, I mean, is it that you just don't understand the titles? But again, like, isn't that relevant to your point? Maybe a lot of people don't understand the title. Yeah, you should click it because it says think tank. You know what I mean? Why do kids like Apple Jacks? They don't taste like apples. I don't know. Kids just do. All right. So okay, we'll move on from there. But yeah, please, like, tell me another name for a video. I'll name it that. So here's from the Art Day, the German art channel.
Yes,
this is about Japan. So this is Japan and Korea.
So this is the officially French-German collaboration channel, which often is showcasing quite well-produced documentaries.
I hear you, Phil. Consider numbering them.
This is a somewhat crazy story, but the individuals here don't seem to be actors. I'm not sure how I should put that. So it seems to be a real thing. Basically, that apparently some people may know this, in the 50s, 60s, North Korea was heavily subsidized by the then Soviet Union. And at least for a time, until I guess America chose to properly invest in South Korea. So you now have Samsung and all these oligarchy structures and a highly industrialized society. But for a certain period, the North apparently was ahead and literally managed to lure Japanese, of all people, into North Korea. And here you have the story of various individuals that some of them lived in North Korea for 30 years until they managed to escape again, and also how they were tricked. And you even have one guy who was part of the committee to greet these Japanese recent immigrants. And when they arrived, he he or some of the people there even said, oh, these Japanese individuals, it looks like they're coming straight from heaven. And then the guy kind of organizing the welcoming committee was like, uh-oh, like this is gonna go sideways, because we were expecting, according to the propaganda, that, the Japanese don't really have food, or they're so poor and they're so happy to return to the homeland, which in this case is North Korea. But then reality crashed onto them. And I'm just thinking how insane that is. Imagine you'd make this wrong choice because, of course, you get propagandized. Maybe you're ethnically Korean or whatever it is. You maybe have some family there or something. You live in Japan. And then for 30 years, you're forced to live in some building without running water, stuff like that. So pretty insane. But yeah, there's one thing about this thing, which we can see on the next, because, of course, at least sometimes I try to do some due diligence and take a look. What do you notice here? So please scroll down a little bit. So this is a paper about the repatriation project. And on the paragraph. All right, now, trick question. Also have everyone in chat. Let's see who's faster. The hidden message, let's say, without saying too much, is in the first sentence of this paper. What is the hidden message? Maybe if you can read it out if you like. Or I can read it out.
Yeah, you go ahead and read it.
Yeah, so a total of 93,340 Korean residents in Japan, including their Japanese wives, were repatriated to North Korea in the repatriation project by the Red Cross of Japan, another huge red flag for me, and the DPRK between 1949 and 1984. So now what we can do, just a second. Here we go. I'm opening up a calculator just so I can do it live as well. So it's about the numbers. So let's see. All right, here we go. So if we put it up again, here we are. So we have 9 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4. And what is the result, Andreas?
9 plus 3 is 12, plus 3 is 15, plus 4 is 19. Okay, that had to be.
It had to be, and of course it had to be exactly 93,340 and not 350. Oh, thank you.
Shout out to Manifestopolis. He's paying attention. Yeah, bro. We love it.
Someone's on the trail. So I'm not suggesting,
knows.
Because the documentary and the individuals interviewed, this seems to have been a real event. However, there may still have been some coding going on here, or at the very least, which I cannot imagine differently, that at least some of the organizers of that project, they must have known that the Japanese even then had decent living standards, and that many people being shipped off there maybe would not be perfectly happy with their choice after realizing what real choice they actually made. So the 19 coding, of course, David Young Jr., there's so many videos about this on my channel, even just specifically Matrix 19, all of that. So it seems to be I'm not sure how to say, coded event, organized, orchestrated event. But you can imagine, maybe not my surprise, I'm not sure what the right emotion here is, but I was looking this up, very first main paper coming up, 19, here we go. So much for the 19 coding in history. But yeah, the documentary is interesting to watch. Unfortunately, they don't always do English translations, but even with German, French, maybe you can set up the Auto CC. It's usually a channel worth checking out. They have quite interesting documentaries on various topics on that channel. And yeah, just the story overall to me is just crazy, especially if you then in hindsight understand how much Japan and also South Korea was industrialized. And I mean, which state is a paradise to live in? Maybe none. But I assume most people would still generally prefer to live in Japan.
Japan's a pretty gnarly ethno state that's rather racist against Koreans. I mean, they're very pro-Japanese and a lot less pro anything else. So maybe the allure of returning to a Korean national state and the promise of socialism was, I mean, socialism in Japan, Marxism in Japan was rather popular. I mean, among certain choirs of people, certain classes of people, the working class. Japan is a very diligent working state, so you know, there's no way that they were having an easy life in Japan per se.
Oh yeah,
I can
sure.
imagine the allure of getting out of Japan, thinking that Japan was hyper industrialized and they were fatigued by
But
never
for
being
example,
able to fully
don't
become
you want to
Japanese.
tell me that the Japanese Secret Service or whoever it would have been, or even ambassadors or whoever, they wouldn't have known and they couldn't have said like, oh, well, dear Korean minority in Japan, maybe first look at this presentation in terms of actual living standards in North Korea. Are you sure you want to go there without being certain you can return legally? Because in the official story here, they claim that they could have returned within a few years, but then slowly they realized, well, actually they couldn't. And I guess many of them still managed to escape. Just an insane story. So I'm like, even if you're the Japanese government, either you really don't like them or you have some other back-end deals or what's going on that you would send them off into a regime where probably even by then you would have known that on the long term, this is not going to be a better life for these individuals. So it's kind of not very humanitarian, for lack of a better word.
Right. Well, you know, I'm very hesitant to say North Korea is anything like the way the West has presented it, but there's definitely some truth to the control mechanisms that keep North Korea kind of isolated. And I don't know, but we're going to see a lot more of North Korea in the next few years, I bet you, because of Trump's trade agreements. I can't imagine that North Korea is going to stay isolated forever. It was a benefit to the CIA to have this North Korea as a threat. I don't see it the same way anymore, particularly for Trump. And a deal is going to be made. I have seen some pretty intense footage out of North Korea from the 90s, and you have to expect that that happened after we basically destroyed their economy and had geoengineering to flood and destroy and cause famines in North Korea. So they've been through a lot. I don't think it's completely fair to say North Korea is some sort of a hellhole on the earth. And the living standard in North Korea does seem to be a lot higher than people admit. And the living standard in these Western countries seems to be a lot lower than people admit. I mean,
well,
PRC
that's another
China's
part, because
life
how
expectancy is the
much
same
can
as
you
the
put
United
on a
States.
screen? How many interiors of a flat can you put on a screen? Usually only one at a time. So of course
True.
it's always difficult with selective perception, even just due to the media, to get an accurate and proper representation. And of course, what I always love about these North Korea documentaries in general is, while it is quite obvious that it's a stage show for tourists and so on, at the same time, which country is not putting up a stage show for their tourists at the tourist spots, or a stage show in terms of political theater and all these other things? So
Pakistan? Just kidding. Anyway, so back to the J stage. Next, we go to the Lord of the Rings Korean Fellowship music video. I feel like we're gonna get.
yeah, no, don't show it. I just wanted to show that this exists, and
It's so great. I really want to listen to it with you because it's North Korean style music as well. Like the little flute thing that they do.
yeah, so it's basically the Fellowship of the Rings, but North Korean style.
Yeah, I love it. It's pretty good. I like that we're making AI versions of this stuff. There's a Rastafarian reggae version of Star Wars, which is pretty good. But basically, any North Korean version of anything so far is my favorite. Gotta love North Korea. I can't help it. I don't know what that says about me. Okay. So the next one's Fyodor Makhnov, right? With his nice furry coat and this little tiny lady.
Across these giants, because of course giants is a recurring theme. David Ewing Jr. actually says that one of the reasons why individuals may have been perceived as giants, although I think some of them are more or less measured to actually be very tall, but he says one of the reasons is also that many individuals during what we would call medieval period did not have access to proper diet or anything like that, that compared to individuals already living in the Starford cities, they may have just appeared to be very tall. So if you get proper diet, and even recently within the last 100 years from the studies I'm aware of, people generally have grown taller. So this may well have to do something with nutrition as well. So then I was just like, well, which are known cases? And this is one or two of the known cases of individuals that appear to have been very tall in history.
Yeah, I mean, he's maybe not 9 feet, but something like 8 feet. That's what they were saying, right? Is that it was unconfirmed 9 foot 3 inches, but from photographic evidence, something around 7 foot 10.5 inches. So pretty close to that 240 centimeter. Big old Fyodor. Okay, and then the Kashmir giants, right? So there are more examples here.
Yes, that's a very known image. Kindly keep talking for 30 seconds, but I'll be right with you. Just we can look at the pictures for a second.
La da 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 da. I don't know. Like, look how big this guy's feet are. How about that? Because you know what they say about giants with big feet. No, I'm just kidding. There definitely are tall people that have existed throughout history, and I don't think that we're getting taller necessarily. Maybe there's certain circumstances where it's true, but genetics play into how tall we get. And it seems like a lot of the super tall people were just killed off, right? Like you think of the Potsdam Giants, that's the one that,
right.
The Potsdam Giants, right? These are the genetically collected by the King. Was it King Leo? No, King Frederick. Yeah, Prince Frederick was so fascinated by tall people. He had a collection of the tallest people, tallest men and tallest women, bred them together to create super tall people. They were already super tall. The problem being that you have an entire collection of generals and soldiers that are tall. Well, they're in the military. Military people often get killed, and Napoleon seemed to kill a lot of them. And this might connect back to why people think
that's actually
Napoleon
a good
was so short.
General point, that generally tall individuals more likely to be used in military. That's a good point as well. So yeah, the whole equation, and also because I mentioned the Starford thing, and I totally want to give a shout out. Can you please go to the private chat and just open that page for a second?
Sure. Let me jump in here to the Art of the Pap, Nortero.
So this is a friend of mine who's a Hungarian. He does amazing art. One of the things he does, it's actually, I think it's also linked on my site somewhere, actually on tarot. If it's even is that a point on my website? Yeah, on my website, on the top right, you see the tarot, and there you have on the one, in this case, go on, tarot research, or just here on the top right.
Tarot right here.
Yeah. So the one thing is this deck by Brian Lahr, who we actually had on one of the very first episodes. Very interesting guy. He does even physical effects, even on a recent show, again, showing how you can spin metal rods with your chi, for lack of a better term. And that's just level 1 of physical effects. But the main thing here being that he does these amazing tarot decks, very high quality and quite syncretic, because on each card, you don't only have the meanings, but you have astrological symbolism, you have the gods associated with it, and all of that good stuff. Let me see if I find a major arcana. Oh yeah, very good. We have the magus here. And on my side, what you can do on the top right, if you go on tarot, you can basically just you can draw these cards for yourself, like digitally. And of course you can get them. And if you, it says page not found, I have to change the link. But then if you scroll down further on my page, if you just go back, then you should have a link to Norbert's page on tarot. Yeah, top right tarot, and then scroll down. Exactly. So this is a link to another deck, which is this deck, which is also, I really like the art style, I have to say. These are only major arcana. But why am I pointing all of this out? Long-winded prelude. Because what he's also doing is he's doing custom-made art for your own shirts and stuff. One of which, and by the way, you can tell, so he's doing like really amazing art. So what I asked him to do, I only realized later, was like, oh, this was really like a low ball effort. I could totally have asked for something much more fancy and colorful. But I saw a similar design and thought like, these squares and so on, it looks like a Starford. Norby, do you know what a Starford is? And he was like, no, I'm not sure. And then I just sent him some samples. and he actually very much accurately depicted one of those samples, which you quickly find. Oh, you even have it there. Nice. You have to wait a second because you're. Oh no, right. Yeah, you have the Xirtus one. I have the Starford one.
There's a cape around here too that's pretty sweet. I'm gonna have to pull that out pretty soon. But yeah, amazing stuff actually.
Yeah, so I wanted to give him a shout out. And because I was like, well, how to promote the whole Tartaria thing or whatever we can find of it, and at least the Starfords we know from 13th Monkey, we have 19,000 instances. So, and if you want something, you can contact him, of course. You can get any type of design that you like. On his Facebook, he has many different examples of all kinds of really cool designs. Or, of course, you can get the Xirtus merch. Yeah, not to forget.
You got to get the Xirtus merch. Okay, so yeah, definitely go to get the Papnort Vision, which you can find through Comency.at the tarot in the top right. Pretty sweet. Okay, and then we went from the Potsdam to the Kashmir, and I think we're now up to East Turia. So East Turia here, let me pull up these. We're going to start with ex-Chancellor Sebastian Kurz, because you know how much everybody they just love Sebastian Kurz.
The guy who, strangely enough, looks exactly like Otto of Bavaria from 100 years ago.
Nice, yeah.
None dare call bloodlines.
Yeah, just bloodlines, yeah. It's well bred. Okay, so what about this? Let me translate this page to English here. Come on, internet. Ex-Chancellor Sebastian Kurz found cybersecurity startup with ex-Pegasus boss. Okay, so he's starting Dream Security. And they raised
so I asked an online friend about what could this possibly mean, because of course in Austrian state media, all you see is a 5-minute blip where they're saying, oh, look, he's so amazing. I mean, I want to kind of say, you know, not only did he trash the country and blow up the Freedom Party and all kinds of shenanigans, even literally, and this is public knowledge by now, internally couped his own party to even get into the position he was in back then. And yeah, so many strange things going on. And even back then, during the lockdown period, very early on, he was praising Israel and Bibi Netanyahu, like glazing him. And now, don't you know, he is 10% stakeholder or shareholder of a company that has to do with cybersecurity. I highly doubt that this guy unto himself has particularly grand IT knowledge. So I asked online a little bit, what could this be? What could be going on? And supposedly you may have mentioned this on recent shows, but maybe I just kind of blanked on it. And the suggestion I got was that this may be related to NSO Group. So he is basically offering cybersecurity for certain big companies or something. And NSO Group, this is actually the next link, is an Israeli cyber intelligence firm, primarily known for its proprietary spyware Pegasus, which people may have heard about, along with what's their face, Palantir Technologies.
Of course.
I'm sure they're all somehow related into each other. I can't say much about it because I don't have any background knowledge. But the first thing I thought of actually was, well, could this be, because who is going to be the hacker? You know, is it going to be the North Korean Team 17 or whatever they call it, and who's funding them? But then I actually thought, and this is really just my own speculation on this, was could this be some type of a protection racket, that if you have a company big enough, if you want to be secure in this very dangerous cyberspace, you better get a very expensive contract from a company like that. I haven't looked more deeply into this, but as usual, chancellors that end up with high-level jobs is quite suspicious. Before that, what we usually had, for example, with Gerhard Schröder, he was a social democratic chancellor in Germany for quite a few years. And he then, I believe, got a pretty sweet deal with Gazprom, as so many others. And now, well, if you don't get a deal with a, let's say, Russian-painted front company, now you get a deal with a Israel-painted front company, where, again,
voila,
I would question their actual product expertise as opposed to whatever connections they may have or whatever particular family or privileged group they belong to as to why they are able to do business on such a level.
2019, Instant Messenger app, parent of WhatsApp Meta platforms known as Facebook, sued NSO under the United States Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. In 2021, Apple filed a lawsuit against NSO in the U.S., and the U.S. included NSO Group in its entity list for acting against U.S. national security and foreign policy interests, effectively banning U.S. companies from supplying NSO. Fun and interesting. All right. Q Cyber Technologies. NSO is a subsidiary of Q
Q.
Cyber
Oh, really?
Technologies. Okay.
Oh my God.
Just got to be a random coincidence there. So I wanted to just really quickly, the one thing I wanted to say about NSO is Superman. The logo, because Superman is Jewish. Like that's why the logo is this Kal-El symbol. The S isn't really an S, right? That's
well, S-O, and of course S for 19, 19th letter in the English alphabet.
Oh man, wait, you're telling me that like something to do with Hebrew has to do with numerology? No way. Okay, so here's Sefeld the Alchemist, not Seinfeld, Sefeld. What's Sefeld?
Yes. So this, I just wanted to, well, yes, here we are. This was actually sent to me by a friend because she saw this on a building. You even have it at the very top. There should be an image so we can look at the image.
Really?
They call him Field. They call him Field of Vision. That's so funny.
Oh, this looks like a South Park cutout. Oh my God, I like it so much already. Look at him just pontificating that orb right there. He's got
this
a sun
is
in his
very
hand.
strange metallurgy style.
What's this tribe of Leo, constellation of Leo, tribe of Judah going on here with the Freemasons and oh my God, all at once? That's just so much. It's too much, man. Okay. What's this say down here?
And
in
you can find
1745.
Yes, in 1745.
The alchemist Sefeld.
Yes, which according to legend was able to scroll to the left again. Was able to produce gold using a powder called red lion.
Red lion.
And magic. He was able to create gold.
Good job, bro. All right. Nice shoes. Nice work, Sefeld. Okay. Is there much more that we should look into him? I guess we should probably find out about the literature, but definitely look into Sefeld, the alchemist. And then Schauplatz, der Gressler Eck.
Yes, so now we're getting into the fun section of it. Sometimes I like to show these Austrian documentaries.
Oh, right.
Without any actors or anything. This is even a bit older. This is from 2001. Back then, you still had quite many shops that basically supplied you with everyday goods and were family-owned businesses. Now, if you have them at all, especially in Austria, then, for example, here nearby you have, for example, an Indian shop with very nice
shops.
You have immigrants and they do it really well. Anyhow, in a regular supermarket, which especially in Austria, you have an extremely high saturation until recently of bank branches, but also supermarkets. And you have about 4 main supermarket chains, and they basically dominate the entire market everywhere, pretty much. So these type of shops.
Say, a Lidl goes a long way. Sorry, I had to do a dad joke there.
Yeah, and as I mentioned before, Trader Joe's is owned by Aldi, right?
Yeah, which is also Lidl and Trader Joe's are both owned by Aldi. Yeah, Lidl is if you go, I'm pretty sure Lidl right here, Aldi. Yeah, Lidl is a chief competitor of the discount chain Aldi, but they're the son or the cousin or something like that. Like it's they're relatives. There's a thing here. The first discount store opened in 73, copying the Aldi concept. I don't have to look into the whole thing there, but
because the original family feud was between Aldi Nord and Aldi Süd, which were supposedly the 2 brothers, and one of them, how nice can you do it? One of them said, "Oh, I'm just gonna take Upper Germany," and the other guy said, "Oh, I'm just gonna take Lower Germany, maybe together with Austria, and that's how they separated their markets, which
You got to
is
work together.
kind of fun.
You know?
So
Yes.
here, what you can see in this Chrysler movie, Chrysler was the name for these family-run shops. Yeah, and actually we skipped over something. So yeah, we can go back to this for a second, but please here, which I'm just going to mention it in one sentence. This is interesting because this is a topic that has never been put up by any German station or broadcaster with any visibility. Auf 1 is a channel that only recently started, maybe 5 years ago. They, of course, have connections to the Freedom Party, so the right-wing party and stuff like that. But what is interesting here, I had brought up the Rheinwiesenlager before and many other topics, which are even much more gruesome than what is being discussed here. However, what they talk about here, which you're never supposed to talk about as a German-speaking individual living in Germany or Austria, is how, of course, due to the Second World War and the repercussions, many individuals that are or were ethnically German were equally forced to move, they were expelled, they were harassed, and worse. So this is kind of an interesting demarcation point for me, that on a channel that, although they're alternative and all the other major channels would say they are insane and all of that, but still they have high production value and actually put up real witnesses to these, how do you call it, expulsions and all these things. So looking at the other side of history, which especially in German-speaking countries or Germany and Austria, you're always only beholden, you know, to the one snake, and everything else is never really discussed. So it's just interesting to me that finally this is being brought out to some extent. Yeah.
Epic.
So yeah, but here back to the more fun things. So here you can see regular everyday Austrians. Here he still wants to sell his shop. Most likely soon afterwards it was bought by a supermarket chain. But yeah, this is something that we had until about 2000. This was quite popular and famous. Do you have these type of stores in America actually, or is also everything dominated by supermarket
it depends
chains?
on where you go. If you go to certain, you know, most things are dominated by supermarket chains, but definitely in cities in New York, Chicago, Minnesota, you'll find little stores that still exist. A lot of them are owned by immigrant families by this point. I think originally they were immigrant families that started them, so it kind of makes sense that this continues to be a trend, families that own these smaller businesses. It depends. I think a lot of these have been replaced everywhere. That's kind of the goal for these corporations, is to do, you know, because if they own 30 or 40 locations, it doesn't matter if one of them fails, right? Because they can supplement it with the other locations. And if you're a family business and you have to really succeed in your one location, you got one shot at this, you know, there's just so many reasons that you can't win in that kind of fight. So yeah, mostly just run by the big companies, and this has been a problem ever since I think the 80s with Governor Jerry Brown, and you know, the Safeway situation as well. Albertsons, right? Who owns Safeway now? I think that's I think it's like an Albertsons company. Let me see who owns it. Yeah, Albertsons, a subsidiary of Albertsons. Albertsons is a weird company for sure. They own a lot of these supermarkets, second largest supermarket chain after Kroger. Kroger owns tons of other ones. I'm not sure which names of which ones, but yeah, it's basically two companies that own everything, is what it is. Okay. And then Schauplatz.
Yes. So another one of those, this was maybe produced 10, 15 years ago. And it's somewhat hilarious because you have these public housing places where, of course, by now many immigrants have been moving in. This is still mainly about, I would guess, the former Soviet Union immigrants. And I want to show one particular spot, which is at minute 9 and 30 seconds, where you actually have an immigrant from, I want to say Kazakhstan, but maybe Kazakhstan or Uzbekistan, maybe put on the CC. And I think then you will hear the lady talk. Oh, you have to change the language.
Here we go. Here, let's go back to subtitles, auto translate into English. There we go. Okay, and we'll go back a bit here. We also meet Mr. Berthold again, who complains so much about the children. As long as that isn't the case, that's me, but that needs management. Miss Anastasia, the saleswoman, comes from Kazakhstan. For many people here, a visit to the store is a daily fixture. What are the people who come to you like? I have to say, I am a young mother and I have been working for over a year. So some people are over 50 years old and have never worked in their life. The
Speaking of
largest,
Austrians,
yeah, of course, the largest percentage of farmers in our 20s are elderly people, sick people, alcoholics. Well, that's too sick. Yes, in Austria,
well, she's basically, yes.
I tried to discuss this in my department a few times. It doesn't do any good. It's like a skull against the wall. Okay. So she's saying that the Austrians don't work very hard? What? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, of course, it always depends on where you are. This is about, again, this public housing space. And the main contentious point here is, oh, all these immigrant families with the children, and the children, they play so loudly up until the evening, this and that. And it's just kind of a fun reality check then by this girl working at the store to say, well, these people love to complain, but how are they living? And even here, I mean,
True.
yeah, anyways. So this is the Vienna aside from the opera house and so on, which again only goes to my point earlier about the media of video and the selective perception, what kind of individuals can coexist in the same city.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like there's a lot of trauma that happened after the war, and
Oh,
we
for
might
sure.
see. Yeah, there's kind of reasons for this. But okay, inside Austria's terrifying new skyscraper build.
Here, basically, just want to point out that Austria has a quite interesting skyline because up to this point, they managed to keep the inner city free of any skyscrapers. So you only have the skyscrapers at the very border of the city looking out, which I guess just gives a nicer view or a nicer
Yeah.
skyline, unless it is something like New York, where anyways everything is full of skyscrapers.
Yeah.
But that's all. And to anyone wanting to see some footage from Vienna, Austria, you can take a look at that. There's nothing too particular I want to say about it. I just found it curious, someone investigating the architecture and actually realizing that it does make a difference how you do city planning, and whether a city can still retain its vibe, which of course for Vienna is vital, this old world vibe, which one of the ways, of course, is not to have anything above 5 stories or whatever it is within the city center and even the main city itself. Because recently they allowed in many places that you build a little bit higher, but then mostly what they did with the renovations I'm aware of is they just renovated the building, maybe put in an elevator, and then maybe put one more floor on top. But that's it. So no skyscrapers in Vienna city center.
And yet, 5 stories is still pretty tall. I mean, a lot of the buildings in Vienna are tall enough that it's not like a tiny city by any stretch of the imagination. It's pretty impressive. It just isn't so disorientingly high. And it's a perfectly fine and acceptable height at 5 stories. I think it's pretty good. Okay, and then one Tag ohne Ausländer, so one day without the Ausländer.
Yes, the Ausländer.
That's what a great.
One day without foreigners. So this was produced again by the Austrian Public Broadcasting Service, and it is interesting two
Outlander.
ways, because what he tries to promote here is the idea, well, look, and that's a valid point, also something that I discussed with David Jung Jr. quite a few times. What about the immigrants? Why does it even happen? There's too much to say about this now. Everyone check out his presentations. However, here, what he's saying is, what if I lived in Austria or went on a trip and I would pretend as if there are no foreigners? So first issue is he doesn't get any gas because there is no delivery trucks going. The toilet isn't clean. He cannot get any new skis for skiing.
Oh man, what a horrible life this guy will have without his skis.
And so
Sorry, I
many
know
other
people in
things.
Tyrol exist. I know. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And so many other things that don't properly function. However, there are some great comments below because, of course, here what they kind of want to convey is this idea, oh, accept all the immigration and so on. However, in the comment section, you have somebody, I think, properly pointing out, saying that, well, we are not talking about the immigrants from 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago, where many truly are hardworking and all of
Yeah.
that, maybe
Well,
some even
refugees
more
that are
than
right now.
Austrians, but talking about the crazy refugee waves in 2015, where even mainline German politicians for some time have been saying, oh, we need to deport them all and all of that, where I would even say you wouldn't even have to go that far. If we were to find a way to have continuous and properly meant now sustainable development and infrastructure worldwide without the need for regular wars and crazy exploitation and throwing bombs and resettlements of peoples, then most likely you would not have many of these immigrants in the first place, because they wouldn't look to Europe to get a better life or something if we didn't bomb their own backyard just to finance whatever other shenanigans.
I love these videos where you have like a rich guy who goes skiing and his whole point is that like his life would be worse without slaves. It's like, okay, cool.
I'm glad you said it.
Thank you, Austria. Okay, we made your point is made. Okay.
Because you can be sure that the guy who's doing this experiment, he's a long time presenter or journalist, so he most likely has got the upper end of the wage scale and stuff like that, you know. So
right freaking now. God, he's so happy he has slaves. Cheers to all the slaves. You could pay them less money to do more work. Okay, point proven.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. So yeah, on the one hand, of course, what the documentary presents is correct. On the other hand, of course, the main issue individuals are having is with something else. So this is, yeah.
Wow.
Many sides
Well,
to
I
each
do
story.
respect refugees. I just wish that we could pay them equally because that would change everything, wouldn't it? Wouldn't that change?
Well, this, and again, if we didn't F up their countries and destabilize nations and so on just to get better resource deals, most likely, most of them, is only my assumption, but I'm pretty sure 90% of even the recent immigrants would be more than happy just to go home. Because if you already live somewhere where you're used to, all your family is, you have potentially better weather and better conditions, less overregulation. Well, if you can be safe there.
Yeah.
Yes.
Good times. Well, that's pretty much, I think we're at and that's pretty much the end of our list. Sweet. So everybody, if you liked this list and you want to see more of it, you can find the Magical Pikachu videos. Just go to the Raphael Comenci.at, go down to the log section and click on 1325. The more you know. A perfectly fine title, in my opinion, Dirty Harry, but let me know if you think it is a better title.
Please give me recommendations how I can strain myself to tie in all the topics with an image and a title that all are relevant without being overly generic and boring. So I also rather choose these not easily understood esoteric titles with esoteric
fun
imagery.
And whimsical, you know?
To make it work.
You can find yourself the links. Thank you for being here, Raphael. I appreciate it. We'll see you next time.
Thank you so much, Andreas. Thanks everyone for listening, and we'll see you next time. Thank you so much.